very good morning to you, by the way. Morning Glory with me, Mike Graham.
Just some breaking news for you coming out of Liverpool Crown Court.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the programme. Welcome to the home of common sense.
Loads to talk about, I promise you that. Loads and loads and loads.
Yes, it's me again, your genial host, Kevin O'Sullivan.
How realistic do you think a ceasefire is this week?
There's a very good chance that we'll have a settlement, an agreement of some kind.
We basically have two countries that
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning and welcome to Morning Glory. It's coming up to 3 minutes past 6. It is Monday, of course. We are here. It's the 29th of September, very nearly the end of September, and we're smack bang in the middle of Labour Party conference. Wouldn't you know it? So you know there's going to be loads and loads of stories to do this morning, all to do with Sir Keir Starmer, the man who bought a field full of donkeys for his parents. In order to say that he didn't put them in a trust and then he didn't pay any money, bought it for 20,000, sold it for 320,000, £300,000 profit in my book, didn't pay any inheritance tax, even though he could have had to pay inheritance tax if in fact it turned out that there was a profit made. And of course nobody would care if he didn't want to pay inheritance tax. However, the bottom line is he wants to tell us to pay inheritance tax on every single thing that we pass from one person in the family to another. So once again, more bleeding hypocrisy from the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer. He comes out the weekend, gives an interview to the BBC, in which he basically says he thinks Reform's policy on immigration is racist and immoral, right? He then makes out that somehow the Labour Party are going to do things differently. Then Shabam Mahmood gets up and makes the same racist policy for the Labour Party. So where does it all end? They've turned out to be completely charlatans about almost every single thing. 12 new towns they're going to build, apparently, according to Steve Reid. Steve Reid, though, appeared at the weekend on television, doesn't even know how many houses they've built to now. I mean, what an absolute joke. Meanwhile, 125 migrants came on one single dinghy on Saturday, right? So that's not going terribly well. Meanwhile, Andy Burnham did a little concert at the weekend in which he said to some surrounding sort of apparatchiks that love him that Labour are running a culture of fear. Meanwhile, Morgan McSweeney, who's still hanging in there, clutching under his fingernails, his files could be the death of Labour, we're being told this morning. Apart from that, it's all going really, really well up in Liverpool. Emma Wolf is here. Very good morning to you, Emma. We've got plenty to talk about with Labour. There's loads of other stories to do as well. Apparently, it costs £950 a day to send some certain special needs kids to school because you have to put them in a taxi and drive them hundreds of miles. The Royals don't want the Yorks for Christmas. Well, who does? And also, GPs are threatening to go on strike if people make it any easier for you to get an appointment with them. What is going on? 0344 499 1000. It's only bloody Monday. This is Talk. We'll see you in a minute. Well, I feel suitably refreshed after the weekend. Emma, I don't know about you, probably working all weekend because you work quite a lot of the weekend.
I do work all weekend, but and we're in the middle of this mad fog.
Yeah.
There's been a very weird London fog has descended, so it feels very, very autumnal.
Do you know what they call it? When I used to live in Edinburgh, he's called it a har.
A har, rolling in across the moors or whatever.
Comes in off the sea, and of course where I live down by the river, it's really thick.
Very eerie.
You can't really see your hand in front of your face.
Yeah, you can normally see all of our London bridges, London Bridge, Tower Bridge. You couldn't see a single thing.
I quite like it though.
I quite like it. It is quite otherworldly.
It's a bit Dickensian.
It's Dickensian, it's very dark out there, and it feels quite sort of Labour conference-y,
the last time London was this dangerous was about the time when Jack the Ripper was around, so, you know, I don't know if I'm mixing up my historical things, but, yeah, I mean, London is a very bad place at the moment, but I was just talking to somebody the other day about it, and they said something really interesting. Nobody's very happy here.
No.
And I think that sums it up, you know, people are not happy to live in the great city of London, which it should be, just because it's really tough safe as a place to live.
It really
right now.
is, and I know we bang on about London, and obviously most people are listening and they're watching and they're not in London, but actually London is in a very, very dark place. And we all throw jibes at Sadiq Khan, who won't let anyone reply to any of his posts on X. All of his replies are turned off. But anyway, it is actually quite serious what's happening in London. I mean, you've had your own experience of crime in the last week, but you know, just the filth everywhere. I was talking to Isabel Oakeshott, and she was talking about Dubai. She was just saying about the streets, and I said, you know, I hate bringing up a 5-year-old in streets that are just filthy. I mean, really filthy. And I don't just mean people leaving rubbish. I mean filthy. You know, not just mattresses and lavatories abandoned, but actual excrement, human waste, tent encampments all over our capital city. And Isabel was saying, I'm sure she's told you the same, in Dubai, the streets are not just hoovered, they're mopped. They're actually clean streets. You don't see a piece of rubbish. I mean,
well, when I used to live in New York, I don't know what it's like now because I know New York has gone a bit like London has as well. But, you know, in every morning, one of the things you would always see is the doorman outside all the buildings hosing the street. They would literally be cleaning it with water every single day.
And it's like the broken window syndrome. When people stop caring, when you start seeing litter everywhere, I don't know whether it's just that people don't care or whether we have a deeper problem, but there's something that is very broken in the city, but also in many UK towns. I mean, Birmingham and the rats and everything, that's just was not...
It's still going on though, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's symptomatic of a government that is not able to do the basics. I don't want the rest of it. I want the basics,
just do
like
the basics.
Streets
just
being cleaned.
Collect the rubbish, keep the place clean, you know, keep it relatively safe. I mean, I was in Manchester a couple of weekends ago, and there was a bus strike. You know, Andy Burnham, who's hailed as this great new, you know, sort of, you know, left-wing thinker, you know, he can't run Manchester.
He can't run Manchester.
All that people tell me is he's putting up loads of speed cameras and the traffic's awful.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's it. You know, well done, Andy. But
well
he's,
done,
of course,
calling
one of
himself
the
King of the North. It's just ludicrous, isn't it?
It's self-entitled, I think. But let's talk about what happened at the weekend, because lots of focus, of course, today and for the next couple of days on Keir Starmer and on the Labour Party up in Liverpool at conference. This is what he said to Lauren Kuenssberg yesterday when he was talking about Reform's migrant policy.
Well, I do think that it's a racist policy. I do think it's immoral. It needs to be called out for what it is.
And do you think that Reform UK is trying to appeal to racists?
No, I think that there are plenty of people who either vote Reform or are thinking of voting Reform who are frustrated. They had 14 years of failure under the Conservatives. They want us to change things. They may have voted Labour a year ago, and they want the change to come more quickly.
So Shamala Mahmood, right, shortly after he gave that interview, basically said that they're going to copy Reform's policy on indefinite leave to remain. Migrants will have to wait 10 years rather than the current 5 before being able to claim indefinite leave to remain, unless they are making a particular significant contribution to society. Also, they're going to be given a new point system. If they're not good citizens, they're not going to be admitted. Does he think that's racist? You know, I mean, he's basically calling every single Reform voter a racist, and that's what it says on the front page of the Mail. It says, Nigel Farage says, worried about immigration, Starmer says you're a racist.
Yeah, and that is a good headline. This was such an own goal, Mike. I mean, really, you are telling... I mean, look at the polling. Reform would be on course to win a massive, massive majority. Starmer is absolutely the most unpopular leader ever.
He is. That was breaking news yesterday,
literally, in 50 years, in nearly 50 years, I think he's got the lowest approval rating of all time. The Chancellor is the most unpopular Chancellor
and that's just
ever.
his own party.
That's just his own party. And he's called the British population racist. If you are worried about immigration, that's effectively what he's saying. This is going to anger...
It will.
I mean, he couldn't have done worse. And then, as you say, the weird contradictions and the lack of clarity, it shows they don't actually have a policy.
No.
From his own Home Secretary, who is saying, the thing that worries me about what Shabana Mahmood is saying is she's saying, unless you're making a significant contribution to your community. So she's sort of skating around this idea of, you know, giving back to your community. No, that's not what people want. It's not that you go out and you do a local bit of gardening, you know, in your local
or
whatever.
work for a local charity.
Well, that's what they'll
because
probably...
that's what they think work is. People who run the Labour government think that work has something to do with public sector and service. They don't think it's got anything to do with generating money or actually making a living. They think it's doing something nice, you know.
But that'll be their get-out clause. That will be their get-out clause. They won't get rid of people. They will just say, oh, you can go and do a bit of community service.
One Labour source says that this to the Mail, I know he's talking about Farage and this horrible divisive policy, but there is a danger that people with legitimate concerns hear it and just think he's calling them racist. I'm not sure that is really the best way way to win people back from reform.
It's really not the best way. And Rosie Duffield on Times Radio was saying dozens of Labour MPs are absolutely disgusted at the direction of the party under Sir Keir Starmer.
Well, more than half of them don't want him to be leader. That's his own party.
Really embarrassed. And you know, when you see him arriving at conference, he's not surrounded by his MPs.
Yeah.
They are going to be absolutely terrified.
Oh, of course.
They're terrified about May. It's going to be a bloodbath.
It will be.
Local elections for them.
It will be absolutely horrendous.
How can they defend this stuff? And then you have Andy Burnham, who's meant to be on, well, obviously not on side, saying, you know, when there's a climate of fear, you know, people can't even defend these policies. You can't even disagree because...
Because he punish you. Because he runs the place like a Stalinist. I mean, that's what he does. Now, here's what Shabana Mahmood said. Foreign nationals who want to settle in Britain permanently will need a clean criminal record. Well, that's good.
Well done.
So what about the 125 that came on a small boat, or rather a large boat, on the weekend, on Saturday? How do you know if they have a criminal record or not?
What about the children and the teenager who died in the Channel? That's blood on their hands.
More or less trampled to death.
Well, yeah,
right,
they didn't stop it.
And here's what she says. Those who give back to the local communities, you were saying, will be able to win preferential treatment. But what they don't say is what happens if you commit a crime. Do you get kicked out? What happens if it turns out you've committed a crime somewhere else before you come in? Do you get kicked out? Do you get refused entry? There's no coherence to any of their policies, right? Anyone seeking indefinite leave to remain in Britain should have a spotless criminal record, she says. Well, how do you know, looking at the people coming, who they are, what sort of criminal record they've got, what they've been doing, who they've been raping or murdering or stabbing? You don't know anything.
And what about, are we still going to pay them their £2,000 to leave if they don't have a spotless criminal record?
Well, your guess is as good as mine.
At the moment, we don't have any more space. We don't have any more slack at all in our public services. It's hard enough to get an appointment without the BMA saying,
I mean, the doctors are brilliant. This is fantastic.
This
is typical. This shows you exactly what the problem is with the NHS in this country, right? The British Medical Association says it will take industrial action if the government goes ahead with plans to improve access to online booking.
Yeah.
So if you start helping the people of this country
to actually get
a doctor's appointment, they're going to go on strike.
How outrageous to get a doctor's appointment.
I mean, have they never heard of the Hippocratic Oath, which says first do no harm?
And Wes Streeting said it's ridiculous that you can get a hairdresser's appointment online, but you can't get a doctor's appointment. And this is what the NHS is up against. They want to kind of go slow. You know what? People want appointments.
Right.
As if it's not hard enough.
Right. It's like a joke, this. The BMA says the moves are being introduced without sufficient safeguards to stop practices being overwhelmed by patients. I talk to people every day, right, who tell me stories about their experience with the NHS.
Yeah.
Not one person that's ever told me, I walked into the NHS waiting room and it was really busy. What they do tell me is I walked into the NHS waiting room and there was nobody in there.
Exactly.
Because there's never anybody in there.
There's never anybody in there, and they are making it harder and harder to get appointments.
Yeah.
You know, you have to battle your way through the receptionist if they even answer the phone, who will then send you a link where you have to then upload photographs, and then 3 days later you get a phone call from someone asking you to verify your identity. I mean, the whole thing has become a dystopian. You know, the NHS has become about the staff. I was in a big London hospital the other day. I was surrounded by posters telling me to treat their staff with respect, and I just thought, it's since COVID. I thought, when did the NHS stop being about the patients?
It was during COVID, and that's when I started saying, actually, they'd rather they didn't have any patients. They'd rather you just didn't bother them. You know, it's much better if you just don't go to hospital.
Just don't go in.
And I always quote my favourite sign that was outside, and I think it was somewhere like Rugby, outside. Somebody sent it in. It was a GP surgery in Rugby, and the sign outside says, "Please do not enter if you are ill." That's what it actually said. And I'm going, but it's the NHS. You're only going there if you're bleeding ill. Anyway, let's go back to Andy Burnham. Here he is talking about a climate of fear at a fringe meeting at the conference yesterday.
One thing I am worried about, and I think we do need to debate at this conference, in my view, is how can you have an open debate about all of those things if there's too much of a climate of fear within our party and the way the party is being run? How do you get an open debate about the directions that we need to take to reconnect with the public if a party member is suspended for liking a tweet by another political party, or a member of parliament loses the whip for trying to protect disability benefits or the two-child cap? You know, how do you get to that point if that is the way we're doing things, where debate is being closed down?
So that's an interesting insight because, you know, when you talk to people in the cabinet, whenever you see them on TV, there's no indication that they're ruling the place like some kind of Stalinist organisation. But clearly that's what they're doing. Yeah. They're telling people that they can't speak to the press. They're telling people they can't have different views than the government or else they get kicked out of the party. I mean, that's the way the fascists operate, isn't it? I don't want to call them fascists, but that's what they call everybody else.
Exactly.
You know.
And when Andy Burnham was pressed on, you know, the loyalty issue, is he loyal to the leader? He refused to use, you know, he refused to say I support Keir Starmer.
Right.
So all of that is bubbling under. But I think really Keir Starmer is in such a squeaky bum position right now. I mean, there are questions all over. You went through them. Yeah. Questions which just have not been answered. The field and the donkeys, right? Trust, not in a trust. Right. In a trust, not in a trust. What a lot of people are saying to me is, hang on a minute, he bought it for 20 grand. He sold it for 320.
320.
You know, the details, the finer details.
And the finer, did you see his face yesterday? We'll play that actually because this is a great clip because the look of terror on his face because he realises what he said. I think this is going to come back to haunt him because all the tax experts have said what he basically did was he put it into a trust because he bought it for his parents, he gave it to them, he didn't gift it to them, he kept it in his own name, right? But it was apparently theirs. So rather than it becoming part of his father's estate, which would have put him over the threshold by which he had to pay inheritance tax, he didn't do that, and he just kept the profits and paid no tax on it at all. And the only way to do that is, guess what? To put it in a trust. Have a look at his answer.
I was a lawyer, I had quite a lot of money. I bought a field for £20,000 at the back of their house, and I said, here's your field, it's yours for as long as you may live. You could put your donkeys in it.
That's because
I didn't create the trust. I simply bought a field, and I said to Mum and Dad, this is for you.
Okay.
It was, and also, by the way, Laura, it was £20,000. We're not looking at a vast estate with great tax.
It's a lot of money to many people, and it sold it many years later
It is a lot of money, but the idea of setting up some complicated trust for a £20,000 agricultural field, which then housed 4 donkeys for all the time my mum and dad. It was my mum. She was able. They had a little outhouse at the edge of the field, and she was able, in the end, to see the donkeys. And my dad built a little sort of porchway so he could wheel the wheelchair out so she could touch the donkeys. That's what it was for, and I gave it to them. I had enough money at the time because I was a lawyer. It was a gift to my mum and dad.
And that's now on the record. You did not put it in trust, and that's not been on the record before, and that is now on the record.
You see his face when she says that. So it's now on the record, you didn't put it in a trust. And I bet you what he's going to say is that I didn't put it in a trust. Somebody else put it in a trust. And he'll make out that that means he actually hasn't told a lie on national television. But he's, I'm afraid, wrong. Wouldn't it be funny, I said this on Twitter yesterday, that Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, gets taken down by a field full of donkeys. Right?
Mike, have you noticed, and I'm sorry...
He looks terrified.
I know. He's so uncomfortable, and there's a lot more about digital IDs that he doesn't know what he's talking about, and he looks
we haven't got to that yet, but also this business of, it was only 20 grand.
I know.
People are going, hang on a minute, 20,000? Yeah. That's a lot of money.
And also, it wasn't just a field, it was clearly... Also, then he sold it for 320. But the point is...
Not a bad profit, is it?
It's not a bad profit at all. That was over 20... Yeah, I mean, that is really, really good. Yeah. But have you noticed there's always, like, an elderly family member? I'm very sorry that his mum was in a wheelchair, right? Lots of people's mums are in wheelchairs. Do you remember the last time...
He was taking winter fuel allowance off most of them.
Yeah, exactly. And they were freezing to death while his parents weren't. The last time there was a scandal, I can't remember whether it was the Ukrainian arsonists or not, or that Ukrainian situation, but the last time he went up to wherever it was, he went up north and he was clearing out his dead brother's flat. And I'm sorry that his brother died as well. But he's always trying to pull on the heartstrings and use a family member or, you know, personal tragedy to cover this stuff up. It's not going to wash. I don't care whether it's his mum or anyone.
I know lots of people who, you know, when they're confronted with, you know, difficulties with their elderly parents, you know, who can't get around.
Tell me about it.
I always think, I know, I'll just buy them a field full of donkeys.
That's ridiculous.
You know? Where'd you get that idea from? This from Rob. Morning, Mike. Last night my wife asked Alexa how many illegal migrants had crossed the channel this weekend. Alexa shut down. Strange that. Oh well, maybe you should get a new Alexa. This one from Mark. Andy Burnham, the next Prime Minister. Have a look at this mess. Piccadilly Gardens are in. Litter, alcoholics, drug taking, dealing overrun with asylum seekers, all a few metres away from a child's play area, and he wants control of a whole country. Keep up the great work. That's from Mark in Nottingham, Piccadilly Gardens in Manchester. is an absolute no-go area for an awful lot of people. Cliff in Berkshire says, sorry, Mike, I'm late listening this morning, but I've been writing a book. Its title is How to Destroy a Nation. Here's a copy. Chapter 1, elect a Labour government. 2, then wait for a year at the end.
Well, I know, but it's funny, but it's not funny, is it?
It isn't funny, but I have to laugh because otherwise
copies of the manifesto are being sold or being flogged at the conference. Copies of the manifesto, which all of this stuff was not in, and everything that is in the manifesto is complete lies.
Yeah, it's garbage, isn't it? Absolutely ridiculous. We've got loads more of Starmer from yesterday to play. We've got lots of other stories to do as well, including an NHS report, apparently, which says despite the health risks, first cousin marriage is OK. What the hell are they talking about? 21 minutes past 6.
We have this one person, Mark, that's bleeding the country dry and is now probably going to have to pay $3 trillion in reparations to Palestine now that he's given Hamas, and as Gaza Hamad, the head of Hamas, said, the greatest gift we could have asked for. We weren't a recognised state before, but now we are.
Shocking.
And it's given complete sanctioning till October the 7th. Yeah. The worst atrocity that has taken place on the Jewish and the Israeli community since the Holocaust.
Yeah.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 25 minutes past 6. This is, of course, the home of common sense. It's the only place to be right now and for the rest of time, particularly this week, while Liverpool is the host for the Labour Party conference. Nobody in Liverpool is really very happy about that, by the way, because they're not very keen on Keir Starmer either. This one from Maggie in London says, so Starmer's mum and dad love donkeys. Well, they must have adored him, and Andy Burnham is the biggest bandwagon jumper. It's as fake as they come. This is it. Nobody likes Andy Burnham either. Dean in Pompey says, morning, Mike and Emma. So Starmer the Harmer thinks reform's policies will tear the country apart because Starmer's government isn't tearing the country apart then. Well, I think Dean, he sees it as his job to tear the country apart. So he doesn't want anybody else muscling in on it, right? Absolutely ridiculous.
And illegal migration is also really tearing the country apart. That's what people are concerned about. And Starmer is obsessed with attacking reform and Farage.
He is.
You know what? I think Nigel Farage could stroll towards the next 3.5 years. He could stroll towards the next general election, doing what he's doing, which is talking about the issues that people care about, without mentioning Starmer or Labour once.
He doesn't need to.
And yet, he doesn't need to. He literally doesn't even. And if you notice, he doesn't need to attack them very much.
And he's quite rightly called this an absolute insult to all the people who have voted, millions who want the government to finally get a grip on immigration. It is an insult.
It is an insult to the British people. It really is.
Also, who gave... This is the trouble with these left-wingers, right? Well, have a look at this, right? Starmer talking about reforms, policies on migration, not only being, racist, but also immoral. You know, who made him the moral champion? This is a guy who's got the morals of an alley cat, as far as I can see.
And since when were we morally obliged to welcome people into the country?
Yeah, who are criminals.
Who are criminals.
Right, let's have a look. This is him on legal migration policy.
Yes, I do. And I think this is fundamental to who we are as a country. We are a proud, tolerant country, reasonable-minded, live and let live, and we are a diverse country where people have come here for centuries to this country to make up who we are. It is one thing to say we're going to remove illegal migrants, people who have no right to be here. I'm up for that. It is a completely different thing to say we are going to reach in to people who are lawfully here and start removing them. They are our neighbours.
Well, he says that, right, at 9 o'clock in the morning. Shabana Mahmood then says, actually, they're going to change the way visas are applied to people asking for indefinite leave to remain. They're going to change the rules. So is that immoral as well? Because that's his own party's suggestion, which is copying Nigel Farage.
They don't actually know what they're talking about, the Prime Minister. So today, I think we have Rachel Reeves in the morning, her big speech, and then Shabana Mahmood in the afternoon at some point, the Home Secretary. So it'll be interesting to see whether they've worked out what is their policy on indefinite leave to remain.
Right.
What is their policy on legal migration?
What's their policy on deportation?
And how many have we had out so far? Are we up to 4?
Look,
are we up to 4 of the blue plastic bag people?
I think we actually got 2 out at the end of last week, so we're up to 6 now.
6?
Yeah. But
we had how many deaths in the Channel, which 3, I think should be laid at the Prime Minister's door?
At least 3 over the weekend, but I think over the course of the last month, probably 5 or 6, probably as many dead as they've sent back to France.
What about those babies and children?
And then, also, more than 3,000 have come over the course of the month of September.
Brilliant.
So the one in, one out is now sort of 3,500 in, 6 out.
Just for the month?
Just for the month.
But since Labour came in, we're over 50,000.
Yeah.
50,000 in.
Yep. Totally.
6 out.
And here's the next bit. Migrants will be forced to leave the UK unless they can show they are good citizens under Labour's plans to toughen up immigration rules. So does that mean that the people who have been here, who live in our communities, who are part of the fabric of our lives, if they turn out to be not good citizens, you should be deporting them then?
Well,
Isn't that an immoral policy?
Well, what's the judge of that? They can't even deport people who've committed crimes because they say they need to stay in this country. Can you imagine the human rights appeals over people being deported for not being a good citizen?
Here's Mahmood saying, if Labour does not toughen its policies, there is a risk, and these are her words, working people will turn away from us, the party that for over 100 years has been their party, and seek solace in the false promises of Farage.
That's hilarious. Working people will turn away from them. Do they not? Have you seen the polls?
I know. They've already turned away.
People have already turned away from them.
Yeah. Here's one from Kevin. He says, Mike, I love the donkey noises for Labour, but the problem is I live in a farm with 5 donkeys in the field next to me. Every time the donkey noises come on the radio, our donkeys are going mad and replying. You sure Keir Starmer doesn't own the field, because he's obviously...
Check your trust.
He's obviously didn't put it in a trust, though. Whatever you do, don't say
he
put it in a trust.
He was a lawyer, and he got specialist tax avoidance advice. He got lots of advice, and he was a lawyer. Do you remember he kept telling Laura Kuenssberg?
Yeah.
I was a lawyer at the time. I had money.
Had some money.
I paid 20,000. Yeah. Oh, and then I made another 300 grand.
Well, this is good from Justin, who says, if Starmer didn't pay any inheritance tax on the donkey field, what about capital gains tax?
Exactly.
I mean, I don't know. I haven't been going around buying fields and making £300,000 profit, so I can't help you with that.
I think he should give that 300,000 to a donkey sanctuary.
I think he should. Or invest in some more donkeys, maybe.
Well, he's going to need something to do when he's out of office.
You put them in the cabinet. You make a donkey the Home Secretary, you have another donkey in charge of the housing business, because the housing business is another one which has gone completely up the Swanee, right? Because Steve Reed was asked repeatedly yesterday by Kamala Tominey.
This was
exactly
bad.
Well, we're not going to play the clip because it's not from here. However, she did a brilliant job of asking him, do you actually know how many houses have been built? And he didn't know. And he's like, I'm not Wikipedia. And you're going, you don't have to be Wikipedia, mate. You just have to be on top of your brief.
So she's interviewing him. She's got all her notes there. She's got the number of houses that have been built or not built by Labour in front of her.
Yeah.
The housing secretary, who's been wandering around the conference, build, baby, build, and making a complete fool of himself.
Like
with
Trump-style hats.
Like Trump.
Yeah.
Which was just embarrassing.
Very embarrassing.
Then comes cock-a-hoop to this interview. He didn't have any notes. He didn't even know the figures. And she asked him, I don't know, 5 or 10 times, do you know the figures? Do you have any idea of your numbers?
Yeah. No idea.
Pathetic. Absolutely
also,
pathetic.
the other great thing about Steve Reid, you'll like this one, right? Hypocrite of the week, which is a big deal in the Labour government. Yeah. He has turned down something like 239 planning applications in his own constituency for houses to be built. Yeah. Build, baby, build, as long as it's not in my backyard.
Absolute peak NIMBYism. Yeah. Doesn't want any building. What about the young people in his constituency? What about the families in his constituency?
Don't get me started on that, because there's another policy coming in a minute. But have a look at this. This is Keir Starmer talking about all these new homes that are going to be built.
It will take more than 12 months to turn around 14 years of failure. And it will take more than 12 months. It will take time. That's why we needed a 5-year mandate. But do I understand the frustration that people have? If you've lived through 14 years... without your money in your pocket and your public going up, your public services being what they should be, then of course you want change more quickly.
Yeah, but nobody can tell anybody else where these houses are being built. 1.5 million houses are going to be built. Where?
The 12 new towns. Complete lie.
Oh, my God.
Complete lie.
Absolute rubbish, right? It's just not happening. 12 new towns, mystery turns to farce. This is on the front page, on page 6, I think,
This was
of
brilliant.
the Mail.
Do you remember that? They came out on, I think it was Friday or Saturday, saying, oh, it's fine, we're going to build 12 new towns. That's going to appeal to young people. A friend of mine said, young people can't even wait for their TikTok to load. They're not going to wait. They're not going to vote for a party that says we're going to build 12 new towns. Then, all the 12 new towns, where? Where are they going to be built?
According to Steve Reid, Tempsford in Bedfordshire, South Bank in Leeds and Cruise Hill near Enfield in North London have been described as the most promising sites, right? But again, it's all just off the back of a fag packet.
Yeah, but locals there going,
Locals are going, no, we haven't been told, we haven't been warned, there's no infrastructure. There's one place which has got a village with about 500 people in it. Yeah. They now want to make it a town of like 20,000 or something.
Keynes.
The chairman of the parish council in Tempsford says, nobody's come to talk to us at all, even as an announcement is being made. We've been given no idea whatsoever of the scale of what we're being asked to live amongst. Nobody's given us any indication whether it's rumoured 10,000 houses, 20,000, 40,000. Last year they said it was 125,000 houses.
But
what's going on with these people?
Mike, that's actually quite serious. They literally are inventing these policies back of a fag packet stuff, and they're rolling them out.
And then just saying it off the cuff.
Serious policy proposals at conference. They are promising people that they are going to really do something about the housing crisis, really do something about building 12 new towns.
And I've seen 2 pieces of information. One, where something like 40% of the houses will be given over to social housing, right? Of which another 40% will be given over to migrants. So an awful lot of this housing, which is being built specifically for migrants, as long as they're good citizens, of course.
Well, that's
really, very moral, isn't it?
Well, so, that's the really worrying thing. And we saw that the population, what is it, 90-something% of the population increase over the past few years has been migration.
Well,
that is a serious problem.
See, I've been saying this for years. People used to go, how do you even know that? You can tell by looking around.
The figures show. I mean, that is really, really worrying. What does that do to the country? What does that do to British people?
Yeah, I know. Here's a nice little clip. We haven't actually got it to play because it's not suitable for morning and breakfast viewing. The Tories literally cover this country in SH1T. This is Steve Reid at a meeting up in the north. We are the disinfectant.
That is an appalling thing to say. That's on a par with Angela Rayner calling Tories scum, isn't it, really?
Exactly right.
And frankly, this stuff about, it's complete lies, the 12 new towns, and they don't actually know how they're going to deal with it, but they haven't...
And they haven't got the wherewithal, they haven't got the people, and they haven't got the materials to build anything. That's the problem. How about this from Matthew? He says, my dog and cat can get medical treatment quicker than me. Maybe paying for an appointment is the way forward. Not that I want to, as my wife and I pay every month when we see our payslips. Well, that's it. 25% of your income tax goes to the NHS. What are they doing with it?
Exactly.
You might as well give it to a load of donkeys in a field, mightn't you? I mean, I don't know. 6:35.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On your smart speaker. On your smart TV. And on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 6:37. It's me and Emma Wolf right here with all the stories in the papers. Haven't even got past the Starmer Labour Party conference yet. We've only got 20 minutes to go.
No, but why? We used to joke. I used to joke to you. I'd say, my 5-year-old could run a government better than this. I genuinely believe that his reception class could run the government better than these grown-ups in the room.
I know. Talk about led by donkeys.
Led by children.
Let's get a voice note from Mark.
Yeah, morning, it's Mark in Lancashire. I think it's quite obvious that these 12 new towns of Steve Reed's are all going to be built on Starmer's donkey field. That's why you sold it for 320k. It's all falling into place, just saying.
I mean, I think you might be right. I mean, it's an awful profit, isn't it, for somebody to make?
Huge profit.
Talk about morality in the same breath, you know. Gaza in Yorkshire says, morning, Mike and Emma, great show as always. Starmer's morality, he didn't ask the Chagos people if they wanted their country handing over from them. Starmer had zero morality. His words and breath are just like hot air, like a fart. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. Lots of really good messages coming through, by the way.
And what about the morality of making a 100% profit in 20 years?
Exactly right. We're being led by donkey, says Lady Maddie. Starmer says, according to him, for centuries people have been coming here and making us who we are. Yeah, that's fine, but centuries ago people forced their way into the country when they invaded us. Talking of Starmer being a lawyer, when he had a questionnaire to fill in about Currygate in Durham, says Steve, he had Labour lawyers to help him, and it took 18 days. There's stuff about that needs researching as well. I think that's right. Well,
absolutely.
Have a look at what he said about VAT, right? Because, again, you know, we've got Rachel Reeves' budget coming up November the 26th, as close to Christmas as it can get, and it will be as Scrooge-like as you can believe as well.
Terrible.
They won't tell us whether or not they're going to raise taxes. They keep hiding behind this, well, we don't want to preempt what the Chancellor's going to say. But have a look at this mealy-mouthed explanation of what he says they're not going to do with VAT.
The manifesto stands, Laura. Can't be clearer than that.
Well, you can. It's a different thing saying the manifesto stands right now, or are you saying actually it will stand in perpetuity? You're not going to unpick those promises.
Well, we put that manifesto before the electorate. We got elected, and that manifesto stands. I'm not going to go through the details of what maybe in the budget. Obviously, it's 2 months away, and no Prime Minister and no Chancellor would ever sit here and indicate 2 months out what may or may not be in the budget. But the manifesto stands.
Well, hang on. Can you be crystal clear there? Because you're saying the manifesto stands right now, but I'm not going to talk about the budget. This is something you've ruled out dozens and dozens and dozens of times. You're ruling it out clearly right now.
The manifesto stands. We made those commitments. We stand by those commitments.
What does that even mean? That's like you saying to, your partner, will you be home by 10 o'clock? I said I would be.
Will you be?
My manifesto stands.
That's ridiculous.
And then he doesn't come home at 10 o'clock and you go, well, something else happened. He's laying the groundwork to make a change. Why doesn't he just say, we can't guarantee anything at the moment because the country is in such a bad way economically, thanks to us, that we might have to put VAT up? That
will really, really hurt working, poorer people. That is really... And why can't they tell us? Because actually people need to plan. You know, they're always telling us about planning.
Nobody knows how to plan anything right now.
But how are regular people meant to plan anything when they don't know what's coming down the line?
Yeah, I know.
We're already at the highest level, 20%, on I think it's half of
How can you even put that up? How can you put VAT up? It's already 20%. What are you going to do? Put like 30% VAT on goods? What are you joking?
Well, because
you've gone mad.
Because they've basically driven, investment and businesses out of this country. They've made working people's lives impossible. Yeah, but they've made employing anyone almost completely impossible in this country.
Yeah.
And economic confidence at an all-time low.
Yeah, exactly right.
So no wonder the country doesn't need to be bankrupt.
No, they're making it bankrupt.
Of course.
They've actually now they've sunk another £1.5 billion worth of taxpayers' money that they don't have into Jaguar Land Rover.
Oh, of course they have.
Rachel Reeves puts out a tweet going, "This great British mark." It's owned by an Indian company.
Exactly.
Right?
Tata, what? Do you think Tata don't have the money to sort themselves out?
And
that was an absolute scandal. I don't know how they got away with that over the weekend.
Who in their right mind is going to give money to a company that seems intent on kiboshing itself by completely going woke and going broke and then getting hacked in a way that they couldn't get out of? And they haven't actually made a car now for about 2 months.
Oh, but it's just a loan, they say. It's just a loan.
Oh, yeah,
really,
sure.
I wonder how quickly that will be paid back.
Absolutely. Let's just take a little detour away from that for a minute. Campaigners have slammed an NHS report advocating the benefits of marriages between cousins, calling for it to be withdrawn immediately because the NHS apparently seems a bit confused about whether first cousin marriage is a good thing, despite the fact that they reckon it causes harmful health defects to unborn babies, right? First cousin marriage. They're now saying the NHS saying that it does have some advantages.
This is really shocking, actually.
Yeah.
There are known genetic defects that can occur when very close family members marry.
Yeah.
And not only are they saying it's all okay, nothing to see here, they're also, as you say, talking about the benefits. There are some benefits, close family cohesion.
That's
and all
like
of this
saying
kind of
it's
stuff.
great. Incest is great because it keeps the family close.
It's really shocking. And
that's a benefit.
But also, Mike, then the NHS and the education system, and I have first-hand experience of this, are left to deal with the situation that is created where a lot of babies and young children are being born who do have neurological developmental delays, severe delays.
Which medical experts say are entirely down to first cousin
marriages. And we know where that happens. There are certain cultures, and guess what? We're not allowed to say this stuff.
Right.
In the woke culture, in this especially NHS woke culture, you're not allowed to speak out and say that.
Well, Anita Prem, founder of the Freedom Charity, which campaigns against forced marriage and dishonour-based violence, says first cousin marriage is not just a cultural tradition, it is a safeguarding risk. At Freedom Charity, we have seen how it is tied to dishonour abuse, where young people are pressured from childhood and given little or no real choice. The health evidence is clear. These are preventable harms that place families in the NHS under immense pressure. So, that seems to be a pretty solid...
A safeguarding issue and preventable harms.
Yeah. And these are the same people who bang on about how they're all about protecting women and girls. Oh, really? So how many of these young girls who are marrying their first cousins are being given a choice about it?
And
I imagine not very
being
many.
veiled head to toe.
And they've actually said in this NHS leaflet that it's been legal in England since Henry VIII passed a law enabling him to marry Anne Boleyn's cousin, Catherine Howard.
Plenty of things were
legal. Are you
legal.
having a joke?
Are they actually having a joke?
Are they seriously claiming that because
women used to be their husbands' properties?
Yeah.
Women used to be raped by their husbands.
Because after
Plenty
Henry
of
VIII,
things used to be legal.
Yeah. After Henry VIII beheaded a few of his former wives, he was given permission to marry his cousin. So that's all right then. Maybe we can bring back beheading. Oh no, they already have done in some places. Incredible. Talking about special needs kids, though, how about this? Front page of the Daily Telegraph: £950 a day to send a single special needs child to school. Telegraph investigations found children and young people with special educational needs are undertaking round trips of up to 368 miles, roughly equivalent to the distance between Watford and Edinburgh, in taxis and ambulances to get to class.
Okay, and this is a problem with inclusion. It's wonderful that children who are behind, in other words, what we used to say slow, are being included in mainstream education.
Yeah.
But instead of putting them in special schools, or whatever you want to call them, instead of putting them in special schools nearby, the government has firstly closed down all the private schools and special schools because of the VAT hike, but also we are busing them and putting them in ambulances to get here. 5 to 10% of some councils' education budget, 5 to 10% is being spent on transport. That is absolutely shocking.
Well, we found out last week that the other scandal is, of course, all these migrants being ferried around in taxis, right? Millions and millions of pounds
NHS appointments.
To NHS appointments with doctors hundreds of miles away, dentists, even visits to the Home Office. Yes. There's a massive amount of money going south in this country, public money, and yet Rachel Reeves has got the cojones to stand up and say, we haven't got any money.
And we're going to increase your VAT on basics, on the basics.
Start saving some of this ridiculous waste, and maybe you'll have some money.
Migrants getting taxis to and from hospital appointments.
Yeah.
Have you ever tried to arrange hospital transport for like an elderly parent?
No.
Almost impossible.
Yeah, I bet.
Absolutely shocking. But if you're a migrant, it's a different story.
Yeah, that's all right. But also the same goes for these special needs kids. I mean, similarly, there's also truant kids and kids who are at risk, as they call them, because I've been doing these stories for years. I mean, 10 to 15 years ago in Edinburgh, they were spending millions of pounds just taking bad kids to school because the parents wouldn't guarantee that they would get there otherwise. So they'd all be going in taxis.
And when you have a British child and you want, I don't know, a little bit of support for their handwriting or something, there's no money because they're dealing with all the special needs children. And I have all the empathy in the world for the sympathy in the world for the special needs children. It's not their fault, but I do think that we need to look again at this whole entire racket.
What's very clear is that the people running the public services of this country don't know what they're doing. It's as simple as that. They can't run an economy. They can't run a council. They can't run a budget. They can't run a taxi company. They literally can't run anything.
This is a lot of money, and every time a migrant appears in court, they've got translators and interpreters and all of that. Right. Every time they go to a hospital appointment, the NHS has how many translators and interpreters that are employed full-time in the NHS that are speaking languages like, I don't know, Somali. I mean, they're literally hundreds of languages are being... In another country, you go and you have to use your phone. If you've got a problem, if you break your leg and you go to, I don't know, somewhere, and you have to use Google Translate to explain what's going on, you don't get a translator and an interpreter.
Yeah. I had a taxi driver this morning told me a story about he picked up 3 Somalians the other night who were in Whitechapel, all drunk, and they tried to pay him with one of those government cards that they get. He was asking, they were asking him to take them back to this hotel, which he said he knows is a migrant hotel in East London.
I'm surprised he took them, actually.
They stopped on the way, get some more booze, picked it up, brought it back in. He said, you have to pay me cash, I can't take this card. They had cash, they gave him the cash, went into the hotel.
Absolutely shocking, isn't it?
Amazing.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing. Phil from Hearts says, regarding these 12 new towns, where is the power going to come from to supply the houses? More windmills? Solar panels? I don't think so. Well, that's the trouble, isn't it? You've changed my sleeping pattern, says Peter in Swansea. I used to go to bed at 2 o'clock and get up at 10. Now I go to bed at 10 and get up at 6, so I can start the day with a dose of common sense. Very good. Let's get a voice note from Lee.
Morning, Mike. Lee from Chelmsford. 2 tiers in big trouble with this one. Has he paid capital gains tax on the profit or not? It's a simple question to answer. And they said it was 7 acres and he's got 4 donkeys on it. I mean, I'm surprised you'd ever get to see him. It's that big.
Well, maybe you got a pair of binoculars, one of those telescopes that you put money in, so you can say, I see no donkeys.
Sorry, Mike, but 7 acres, that's not a field.
I know.
That's, that's quite a large property.
I bet you he must have sold it for redevelopment, mustn't he, for 300,000?
He must have. And what's this stuff about, and then my father built a little porch just so Mum could sit there in her wheelchair. 7 acres, she's going to need binoculars.
Yeah, his dad was a toolmaker, of course, so he's good at putting those things up. I'm starting to feel like we're all permanently living within a spitting image sketch, says Daniel in Surrey. Perhaps these 12 new towns can have a Boris Hospital included as well. I mean,
a Nightingale Hospital?
Yeah.
That would be brilliant, wouldn't it?
That'd be great. Absolutely
as long as it's not like the the Blackpool Victoria Hospital.
Oh, yeah, we'll come back and talk about that. Britain's worst hospital, the hospital from hell. And you won't believe this. This is the NHS we're talking about. It's like literally living in the Crimean War.
It really is.
6:49.
Meghan Markle is quaking in her boots at the terrifying prospect of a tell-all book. The difficult Duchess suddenly severed all ties with Canadian Jessica Mulroney after the celebrity stylist was accused of white privilege in a race row over her failure to support the Black Lives Matter movement. Jessica is reported to have been offered a $1 million deal to write the story of her life and times with Prince Harry's social climbing American wife.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 6:53, very nearly 7 o'clock. Emma Wolfe is here with us. This from Margaret in Birmingham. Morning, Mike and Emma. 1,300 across the channel this weekend. Shabana Mahmood, it's not working, is it? How many more since September the 5th? And now, today, more gimmicks. We don't want them in the community. Margaret, that is the problem, isn't it? Let's get a voice note from Fran on digital ID.
Hi, Mike. It's Fran here from Belfast in Northern Ireland. Mike, just reference this digital ID thing. I'm actually a compliance manager for a recruitment company. And it's one of my jobs to ensure that all our temporary workers have the right to work in the UK. And we already have a digital system because it came in a couple of years ago after COVID finished. It's called a share code. So anyone who doesn't have a British or Irish, because we're a Northern Ireland passport, has to give me their share code and their date of birth. And we also check their ID. And then I go on the line on the government website, I put their share code in, I tell them the company that we are, and that tells me whether they have the right to work in the UK. So the thought that this is just going to stop bad people doing bad things is just for the birds, because the good people like us will still check that the people have the right to work in the UK. And the bad people, just like they ignore it now, they'll ignore it in the future. It's ridiculous. Love the show, Mike. Take care, bye.
Fran, thank you very much. Very useful information. People tell me that there's already all these things in place. You can't employ people without a national insurance number unless you're a crook. And if you're a crook, you don't care.
And again, Starmer, and that's a really interesting information, like actual expert information from Fran, but Starmer was pressed on it again and again and again yesterday. Right. Why bring in digital ID when we already have national insurance numbers? The people that are not checking your national insurance number and your right to work in the UK, they're the criminals.
Exactly.
They're the ones who are going to employ these people anyway.
But he's like a cyborg, right? Because he just repeats it as if it's true, you know, it will help stop illegal migration. Well, how exactly?
Sheer panic in his eyes. No, he didn't even say that. He just kept saying that we all know that illegal migration is a problem. Yes, mate, we know that it's a problem. That's why
you're not going to stop loads of young men who have no identification, and if they do, they throw it away, coming to this country without their ability to tell us who they are. You can just invent an identity for them and give them a card that says you're now allowed to work here.
But also, OK, picture the boats. The boats are still arriving. People are still coming off. They're still going to be housed and put up by the government. They're not going to say, well, you don't have a digital ID, you can't come in. They're going to be... They're still going to be looked after. Of course they'll let them in.
Absolute
because
rubbish.
They haven't stopped the boats.
No, they literally haven't stopped the boats. Let's have a look at something that happened over the weekend as well, which upset quite a few people. This has been doing the rounds on social media. It was a young 16-year-old girl who was taking part in a protest, which was a show of sort of, you know, patriotism more than it was a protest against anything in particular. But here she is having a police officer snatching away from her a British flag. Have a look at this. This is extraordinary.
Shall I get a flag back?
Stealing a flag.
That's absolutely
sounds
shocking.
like a Liverpool voice, that, so maybe in Liverpool.
And actually, with force.
But what about this light blue outfit he's wearing? I mean, I've never seen that before.
Is he patriotic enforcement
what I'm interested in is I don't know whether he's a member of the full-time police or whether he's some kind of...
It's got something on the back of his or whether
jacket, he is, in fact, some kind of different... I mean, it looks like he's tooled up like a police officer, so... But what's with the light pink hat?
I don't know, and I don't know why
in what world does anyone who is a police officer guarding the law of this land think that waving a Union Jack is somehow wrong? What is that? What the hell is he doing?
And forcibly pulling it off a 16-year-old girl.
Yeah.
Well, off anyone.
Yeah.
What is he doing?
Stephen Barrett, the lawyer, who we both know, said that he would understand that under law to be theft.
Exactly.
Because it's like taking somebody's personal property.
Taking their personal property. It's a Union Jack flag. All the Prime Minister ever talks about now is patriotic values and national renewal.
Yeah.
So someone standing. He doesn't say, you can't stand on that table, it's not safe. No. He says, he grabs her flag off.
I think he's going to be in big trouble,
I
this
hope
guy.
he's in big trouble.
Because we're going to find out who he is, and we're going to find out why he did it, and he's going to be having a bit of a problem. But he's clearly a member of the police, because he's got an earpiece, he's got the walkie-talkie, he's got all the, But
I just can't see what it says on the back.
I just don't know what, and if anybody knows what this light blue insignia
we need to freeze frame it and then zoom in. Someone can do this.
Yeah.
And then zoom in on what it says on the back of his jacket, of his little gilet thing.
Who knows?
Tooled up.
This from Alex. Labour will meet their housing targets. They're going to use Lego. That's quite a lot of Lego bricks, actually, to be honest.
Well, we've got Lego Head. We've got the Chancellor talking in a couple of hours at the conference, and that's going to be painful.
Oh, that will be
really painful.
Yeah, we'll have some fun with that tomorrow, I'm sure. Final story for you, the front page of The Sun this morning. Ban on dog walkers by the royal family. Get off one's land is a great headline. William and Kate will be protected from a huge no-go area, banning locals from land near their new home. CCTV cameras, massive fencing and landscaping will keep trespassers away from the 8-bed Forest Lodge in Windsor Great Park, Berkshire.
Yeah, well, he is the future king.
I don't have a
they're
problem
moving
with this,
into Forest Lodge. And they've actually closed down one of the car parks in order to sort of extend the security area for this new royal arrival.
Yeah.
As it were, but I think local dog walkers, as you say, not very happy about it.
Yeah.
Although they want to welcome the
royals. As I say,
royals.
I mean, the future king of this country, I think, is entitled to have a bit of a no-go area around his house.
He will need security, exactly.
You know, because particularly in the rather sort of febrile times.
And particularly with 3 children.
Yeah, exactly right.
Absolutely.
Meanwhile, the king has reportedly told Prince Andrew and his ex-wife Sarah they're not invited to royal Christmas celebrations next year, or this year rather. There's any surprise about that. And meanwhile, Buckingham Palace has been left bemused, perplexed and saddened by Prince Harry's conspiracy outburst about the men in grey suits. So life goes on in the royal family. And also, we won the Ryder Cup. I'm just going to mention that in passing. You might not be a golf fan. But
we should also mention, before the feminists get at you, the Red Roses.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, the ladies.
Yeah,
you're not allowed to call them ladies.
They did well.
They did well, they won.
But not for the first time. Apparently they won it loads. So, you know,
apparently.
They would have expected that to be the case. But listen, Eric, great to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Robert Taylor's coming up. We're going to talk some more about donkeys. Because how do you turn a field worth 20,000 into a field that's worth 320,000? I mean, if only you could do that to the economy, we'd all be laughing. So I presume it's got nothing to do with Keir Starmer. But we'll find out. Emma Wolf, thank you very much indeed. We'll be back after the news. This is Talk.
Is it transphobic to say only women have a cervix?
Well, it is something that shouldn't be said. It is not right. A woman is an adult female, and the court has made that absolutely clear. I actually welcome the judgment because I think it gives real clarity. It allows those that have got to draw up guidance to be really clear about what that guidance should say. If you want to fight for Remain, vote Labour. Now, there are some who say we don't need Brexit to work. We need to reverse it. I couldn't disagree more. Day after day, there are new allegations of sleaze, of favours, of privileged access. And it's all very well the Prime Minister saying, well, say now, well, I'm paying for it.
You've decided to repay £6,000 worth of gifts.
Lord Ali is facing an investigation. I wonder how concerned you are that your biggest donor was not fully transparent.
Are you saying you made a mistake?
It was right for me to make those repayments. Thank you. Of course, I wouldn't want Donald Trump round for dinner, but don't underestimate the danger to the world if Trump is re-elected this time around. I'm anti-Trump. I would like to send my warmest congratulations to President Trump on his inauguration
as the 47th President of the United States.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's coming up to 3 minutes past 7. I'm Mike Graham. It's Monday, the 29th of September. We are smack bang, ladies and gentlemen, in the middle of conference party season. And are you lucky, lucky people? It's Labour Party conference this week up in Liverpool. It kicked off yesterday. Keir Starmer gave an interview to Laura Kunsberg in which he revealed a great many things. He thinks that by introducing an ID card, which is digital, it's going to stop illegal migration. He turned up with his wife to loads and loads of cheering people. But, of course, it turned out that, as usual, with all these Labour stitch-ups, it's not actually members of the public. It's all members of Keir Starmer's team who have armed themselves with Union Jacks, which apparently they're allowed to wave in front of Labour Party conference. But if you go around the back, around the other side, and you're a 16-year-old girl and you wave one, you get it taken off you by a police liaison officer who apparently thinks it's somehow unpatriotic and possibly far right. I'm not quite sure why Lady Starmer's wearing dark glasses there. She maybe can't be bothered to actually look and see what's in front of her, which is the very absolute shell of a man who used to be an effective leader of the opposition and is now a completely ineffective Prime Minister of a failing country. To wit, he is now calling Nigel Farage's policy racist and immoral, even though Shabana Mahmood, his own Home Secretary, is about to embark on the same policy in a speech this afternoon. He's revealed that he bought a field for his parents for £20,000 so he can put some donkeys in it because apparently his parents were big fans of donkeys. Hardly surprising, make your own jokes there. Then he managed to sell it a few years later for £320,000. Now, I don't know about you, but that seems to me to be a pretty big markup. If you could do that with the economy, not only would we all be able to get a free donkey, we'd all be riding around in clover, because he'd be such a brilliant economist. But unfortunately, that's not the case. But he claims he didn't put it into a trust, even though every single tax advisor worth their salt says that's the only way he could have done it. And he also, we don't know, whether he paid capital gains tax on it. Seems to be an awful lot of money. And here's a guy who spends his entire life telling people that they shouldn't try to avoid paying tax because it's unpatriotic. He's also told us, of course, they're going to build 12 new towns, only nobody knows how they're going to do that. Steve Reed, the housing minister, has no clue how many houses they've built already. And in the meantime, 125 migrants came over on one boat, one huge super dinghy, which has now got more than 100 people just on one of them. Look at the tracker. Migrant Tracker says 56,320 people have come into this country illegally since Keir Starmer was Prime Minister. That's a record number, ladies and gentlemen. 33,078 arrived in 2025 alone, which is another record number. So he's pushing the boundaries, man. He's doing really, really well in messing up this entire country. Also, Rachel Reeves is promising guaranteed jobs for everyone between the ages of 18 and 21. Doing what exactly? My son's 18. I've got another son who's 21. There's not a lot of jobs going around. 0344 499 1000 is the number. This is Morning Glory. It's the home of Donkey Kong this morning. Keir Starmer, get it on. Here we go. Now, we've got many, many of you to talk to this morning because lots of you are getting involved because this is literally the most ridiculous situation you've ever found yourself in. We're going to talk to Robert Taylor, political columnist, in 1 second. But first, a voice note from Boz.
Morning, Mike, and the breakfast team. Travelling Boz here. So, the donkey sanctuary he had, he can't remember what he done with it. I know one thing, though. Those 4 donkeys, they all galloped off to Blackpool Beach rather than listen to that boring git. And as for the manifesto, that's been written in pencil because he can rub it out and change it any time he likes. Carry on the good work. Starmer out.
Yeah, Starmer out. I think everybody should finish their voice note with that. That'd be good today. Because it's only Monday. I mean, might as well have a bit of fun, right? 29th September. It's going to be October soon, and then Halloween. Goodness me. I mean, wouldn't it be great to get him out before then, just to be frightened by somebody else? 0344 499 1000. Mick says this, the donkey in Shrek said, I'm a donkey on the edge. Sounds appropriate. And one called Scottish here says, every person who crosses the channel has committed a crime. By doing so, that means none can stay. I hate this government. Well, this is the thing. I mean, the papers this morning are full of contradictory headlines, right? Migrants on benefits are to be barred from the UK, it says on the front page of the Daily Telegraph. This is from a speech coming up from Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, telling Labour conference later this afternoon. She's going to say foreigners must contribute or be sent home. Immigrants face good citizen tests to stay in the UK, according to the Times version of events. Foreign citizens will have to volunteer in their community, have no criminal record and a spotless no criminal record. They have to speak English to a high standard and be a net contributor to the economy to qualify for permanent settlement. Well, that means none of them will qualify, doesn't it? And of course, you then got the story on the front page of the Daily Mail, which is Nigel Farage hitting back at being called a racist, effectively. The Prime Minister attacked Reform's immoral policy on scrapping leave to remain because he said that he thinks it's immoral and racist. Mr Farage says the claim was an insult to millions of people who want the government to finally get a grip on immigration. Absolutely right. Let's get Keir Starmer and what he said to Laura Kunsberg yesterday about Reform's immorality.
Well, I do think that it is a racist policy. I do think it's immoral. It needs to be called out for what it is.
And do you think that Reform UK is trying to appeal to racists?
No, I think that there are plenty of people who either vote Reform or are thinking of voting Reform who are frustrated. They had 14 years of failure under the Conservatives. They want us to change things. They may have voted Labour a year ago, and they want the change to come more quickly. Yes, I do. And I think this is fundamental to who we are as a country. We are a proud, tolerant country, reasonable-minded, live and let live, and we are a diverse country where people have come here for centuries to this country to make up who we are. It is one thing to say we're going to remove illegal migrants, people who have no right to be here. I'm up for that. It is a completely different thing to say we are going to reach in to people who are lawfully here and start removing them. They are our neighbours.
Yeah, he seems a bit confused, doesn't he? Let's talk to Robert Taylor. Robert, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
I mean, hard to imagine that Keir Starmer could make the situation even worse than it was on Saturday, but he turns up on Laura Kunsberg's show and it does exactly that on Sunday.
Well, he does seem to be a little bit confused about what is and what isn't racist. Apparently, Reform's proposals about indefinite leave to remain are completely beyond the pale racist. Can't get worse than that, Mike, can you? But then 24 hours later, or even less than 24 hours
less.
Later, Labour come up with something that looks very, very similar. But no, that's not racist. That's just plain nasty, but not racist. It seems to be falling between two stools here, not doing enough to appeal to millions of people who are going to vote Reform, but alienating people on his left who think that anything to do with migrants, anything to do with saying to people you've got to speak English or you've got to contribute is somehow beyond the pale. He's falling between two stools. I don't think he's going to please anyone here, Mike.
Well, of course not, because, I mean, not only is he not pleasing anyone, but he's already one of the least popular Prime Ministers, I think the most unpopular Prime Minister in the history of this country. Even inside his own party, more than half of the people in Labour who were polled at the weekend don't want him to be leader anymore.
Yeah, and the only reason I think he is leader is because Andy Burnham, who's his main adversary, isn't actually an MP at the moment. And there's no obvious route for Andy Burnham to become an MP. He'd have to beat Reform in a by-election. Well, that's not going to be very easy. Angela Rayner is now disgraced and over on the back benches. And the one man who I think could do a really good job, who's streeting, his own members, the Labour members, think he's too Blairite, too right-wing. So it's almost like Starmer's still where he is, because the alternatives all handicapped by something.
Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, the most ridiculous moment, I thought, in that interview you did with Lord Kuenssberg yesterday was this talk of the donkeys, right? Bringing donkeys into a conversation where it's already, you know, sort of riddled with humour, and people are just kind of going, what is he talking about? First of all, there's several things he gets wrong. First of all, I think he's got himself locked into a really bad place now, because he has said on national television, and he has guaranteed he did not put this field into a trust. Now, every single tax lawyer, every single tax advisor has looked at what he did and said the only way to do what he did was to put it into a trust. Now, I know Starmer well enough now to see that he used a particular type of word. He said, I did not put it into a trust. Now, that means he could say later on, well, you know, I didn't put it into a trust, but my tax advisor did, or a lawyer did, or somebody else did. You know what I mean? Let's just have a quick look at how he said it.
I was a lawyer, I had quite a lot of money. I bought a field for £20,000 at the back of their house, and I said, here's your field, it's yours for as long as you may live. You could put your donkeys in it.
That's because
I didn't create the trust. I simply bought a field, and I said to Mum and Dad, this is for you.
Okay.
It was, and also, by the way, Laura, it was £20,000. We're not looking at a vast estate with great tax.
It's a lot of money to many people, and you sold it many years later
It is a lot of money, but the idea of setting up some complicated trust for a £20,000 agricultural field, which then housed 4 donkeys for all the time my mum and dad. It was my mum. She was able. They had a little outhouse at the edge of the field, and she was able, in the end, to see the donkeys. And my dad built a little sort of porchway so he could wheel the wheelchair out so she could touch the donkeys. That's what it was for, and I gave it to them. I had enough money at the time because I was a lawyer. It was a gift to my mum and dad.
And that's now on the record. You did not put it in trust, and that's not been on the record before, and that is now on the record.
He looks terrified when she says it's now on the record. And listen to the words, right? He says, I did not create a trust, right? And he kind of gives that kind of grimace when she says, and you didn't put it into a trust. So, I mean, if you want to be pedantic, he's got sort of legal wiggle room to say somebody else created the trust. But, I mean, he gets it wrong, because the fact is, if somebody created the trust, he should say somebody created the trust. And then he goes, oh, 20,000, not very much money. You know, there are people living in Liverpool who would love to have 20,000 to their name, but they've never made that in a year. Because people don't have that kind of money lying around to buy a field. And it's just so bizarre that he would somehow have his parents buy 4 donkeys, you know, and then he makes £300,000 profit, which he pays no tax on.
Yeah, there's something not quite right about this story all round, is there, Mike? Because we already know that he's failed in the past to register his interest in that. He had to apologise to the parliamentary regulator for that particular matter. So there's already something a bit fishy going on. And as I understand it, Mike, you don't actually have to actively create a trust yourself for a trust to be created. And I'm quite sure someone who was a leading lawyer like Keir Starmer must have known all that. So a trust can be created even if he doesn't actively go out to do it. And why? The other thing here, Mike, is that he's been asked by the Sunday Times for several weeks now to create a trust, and he failed to respond.
He just didn't answer, did he?
Didn't answer, and now on national television, when he can't go anywhere, where he's got to say something, he now says no trust was created. Well, let's see if the facts really stand up to that, because I think this is another example of Starmer living by one rule when he's in power, but insisting on another rule for all those Tory MPs that he criticised just a year ago.
And of course, he's got that great trust expert formerly in his cabinet, Angela Rayner, who was, of course, the Deputy Prime Minister. I mean, she had a trust for her own. So, I mean, how many of these Labour politicians have got trusts, I wonder?
Well, we do wonder. And that sort of stench of sleaze, which was one of the main reasons, I would say the main reason, that he convinced people to vote for him last year. That stench of sleaze, whether it be McSweeney, whether it be Mandelson, whether it be Rayner, various other Labour ministers who've had to resign, and now it's coming very close to him himself. If you live by the sword, Keir Starmer, a year ago, you end up potentially dying by the sword when you're Prime Minister yourself.
That's exactly right. But as I say, I mean, every single tax accountant can't be wrong who says that if he didn't give it to them and he sort of loaned it to them because he retained ownership of it, that is technically a trust, in whichever way you cut it. So for him to say they didn't create a trust, you know, by the act of doing what he did, he kind of did.
Well, that is what the tax advisors are saying. That's what he, I'm sure, must have known when he sold this field and when he gave it to his parents originally. He must have, I mean, he's a very, very high-profile lawyer. You know, Starmer isn't going to do something without knowing the detail.
Right. I mean, it's not clear. I'm not sure if we know precisely what the year is. I think I read it in the Sunday Times yesterday. I haven't got it to hand. But, you know, was it
1985, I think.
Yeah, so was it while it was before he became Director of Public Prosecutions, wasn't it?
Correct, but he sold it. He sold the field for a massive project, so 10 times its original worth.
Yeah.
And only a couple of years.
Well, more than 10 times, 15 times.
15 times, correct. So it's a lot of money we're talking about here.
Well, I mean, if I could put something in, well, you know, if I'd put £20,000, which I didn't have back in 2003, into a donkey field, and then 10 years later I made 300 grand, I'd be pretty happy with that. I think we all would. I mean, it's the kind of money that people only dream about, you know, and he's kind of making out that it's nothing. Oh, I didn't have to get a very complicated deal. I mean, what an absolute complete and utter moron. Let's have a quick voice note from John on this.
John from the door here. Stop her out.
I mean, that is the thing. People just ridicule this man now because he's got nothing to stand, not a leg to stand on. Julia from South East London says, can I have some donkey bumper stickers, please? As some of my neighbours have Vote Labour in their windows. I mean, this thing is going to go for miles, isn't it? Because he's barked up the wrong tree, if you'll pardon the mixed animal metaphor, to try and get sympathy. Because he's sitting there as if he's to say, oh, you know, I had to do this for my ailing mother. She wasn't very well. You know, nobody would have a problem with that. It's the hypocrisy that people hate. And when he's talking about morality, then he gets into even more dangerous waters, doesn't he? Because, as you said, not only is Labour now pretty much copying reform policy, but, you know, who is he to set himself up as the moral arbiter of the nation's sort of consciousness?
So we have 3 live stories. We've got the McSweeney story. The Mandelson one isn't going away.
Right.
What did he? And now we've got the donkey story. So 3 live sleaze stories.
Yeah.
Just at a time when he's about to give his big speech to the Labour Party conference. And as you say, Mike, we already know that most Labour members want to have a different leader. Yeah. And I think you'd be pretty sure that an awful lot of MPs, Labour MPs, want to have a different leader as well. It's all kind of getting very close to Starmer now.
It is. And also, let's have a look at some of the other crap, I'm sorry for using that word this time in the morning, that they're coming out with. Paid work for all jobless young people, it says on the front page of the Daily Mirror, shouting loud and proud about Rachel Reeves and how great she's going to make the world. Apparently, the Labour will today promise a paid job for all young people as part of a new youth guarantee. Well, they can't. You can't promise a job for everybody. There aren't any jobs. You know, we've got another story in the Telegraph today saying that, you know, job vacancies are at an all-time low. You know, the projected sort of, you know, vision for the economy is one of recession. There is no opportunity out there. Young people are leaving the country because they can't get work. But she says they're going to get given a guarantee of a job. How exactly?
Well, exactly right. And of course, they've destroyed jobs by national insurance on employers.
Yeah.
Which they said they wouldn't raise national insurance, and then they kind of used a kind of technicality to get around that. And by the way, I wonder if they're doing that with VAT as well, Mike, that, you know, we're not going to raise VAT, but is there going to be some Weasley form of words in Rachel Reeves's budget that allows them to do it? But you're absolutely right. Where are all these jobs coming from? We already know that jobs are being destroyed. So how can young people just go into jobs, presumably at the taxpayers' expense? I just don't understand how that can be done.
Exactly right. And, you know, again, it's all about this impossible sort of, you know, vision, as if they all sit in a room and go, I know, let's just say we're going to do this. Again, yesterday, Steve Reed, the Housing Secretary, sort of embarrassed himself on television because he didn't know how many houses that Labour had so far built since they've been in charge. But also, these people who live in the 3 so-called super towns that are going to be built have never heard of any planning permission being sought or any, you know, as they put it, spades in the ground to do anything.
Yeah, it's all getting rather desperate, isn't it? And I think they look at the polls and they see that they could be handing over government to the dreaded Reform Party, maybe as early as 2027, maybe as late as 2029. And they're thinking, we have to do something. And they're getting desperate. And the more desperate they get, the more silly it all sounds and the more holes in their plans.
Exactly right. So in your view, given what we've already said before about how difficult it is to remove a sitting Prime Minister in a Labour government, it's looking more and more likely that something is going to happen here.
Well, yeah, it is. there is a more difficult mechanism than for the Tory party. For them, they can get rid of leaders, like having hot dinners is easy enough. For Labour, it's more difficult. The last Labour leader who went mid-term, while Prime Minister, of course, was Tony Blair.
Yes.
Went after 10 years and, kicking and screaming out of Downing Street. This is not easy, but I think if the polls continue to be bad for Starmer and his personal ratings are even worse, I reckon pressure will be brought upon Starmer, and at some stage, maybe in the next year, maybe a lot sooner than that. I know you think it'll be a lot sooner than that, Mike. He'll have to leave and we'll get a new Labour leader.
I just have this vision of him standing on an iceberg, which is literally shrinking as we watch it, and it's now down to literally around about the circumference of his feet. I mean, there's not a lot of room to go. But listen, great to hear from you, Robert. Thank you very much indeed. That is, of course, our man Robert Taylor, political columnist. Even he now thinks it's possible and likely that this guy Starmer ain't going to last. Let's get a voice note from El on his field.
My partner has a huge converted farmhouse which has 6 acres of land. That land is worth $15,000 an acre as agricultural land, and it'd be worth $1.5 million as land with something called hope value. Now, the problem is Labour have recently changed all the rules, whereas they could only buy compulsory purchase, buy your land for certain things like schools and hospitals. They've changed that now. So all these people hanging on to land are going to find that when they were expected to get $1.5 million if they hung on to it long enough, they're going to just have it compulsory purchase. So I think Starmer's sold up now because of the new laws they've brought in, that he thought he was going to get all this money for it, and he's not going to, so he's getting shot now.
Well, no, he sold the property they sold the land a while back, and he got 300,000 quid for it. So he imagined got it under the old rules. And Julia says this: I'm pretty sure if you put more than 3 farm animals on a piece of land, it saves you money, and you get farm subsidies. Well, there's another question that you may have to answer at some point if he ever returns to the Houses of Parliament to be asked questions about it. This from Steve in Wales says, regarding Starmer's Donkeygate, when Starmer purchased the land for £20,000, the average salary at the time in 1996 was £15,000. £20,000 was not that much, according to Herr Starmer. Yeah, well, this is the thing. He's obviously had quite a lot of money for quite a long time, working as a lawyer, pretends that he's, raised as a working-class boy. But here he is, spending 20,000 quid on a field so that his parents can gaze out and look at donkeys, for heaven's sake. What is going on? 7:24.
People watching this in their thousands who are going, I've just done my week's work, I've paid my bills, I've fed my kids, I can't even afford to get an Indian tonight, I might have a can of lager, my missus is there. And these people, it is becoming so farcical and so embarrassing. And they wonder why the British people have had enough. They have had enough in their millions.
If you can't get an Indian, right, you just call up this taxi company and they'll bring you an Afghan for 250 quid, because it says here...
Did I deliver that quite well for you?
Yeah, it was, thank you.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 7:27. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 o'clock, of course. Very foggy outside. Can't actually see across the river this morning. There's a bit of a sort of an autumnal mist, or a har, as we used to call it in Edinburgh, coming in off the river, off the water. It happens, I'm told, when the water, I think, temperature starts to get slightly warmer and the temperature outside starts to get slightly cooler, as it tends to do at this time of the year. Some of the stories coming in today to me are absolutely fantastic. Some of your messages brilliant about the Keir Starmer donkey gate problem, and of course exactly what is been going on with this donkey field is becoming more and more clear that he has been less than transparent and possibly obfuscatory about telling the truth, because according to people who know about these things, in 1996 Keir Starmer bought a 7-acre field behind his parents' house so they could keep rescue donkeys, right? However, it looks as though it was bought in the way that it was bought, in such a way that it basically would mean that he bought a life, or he used a life interest trust. This meant that as its value grew from 20,000 to 300,000, it was outside his parents' inheritance tax estate, right? Now, he says categorically he didn't create a trust. But the way that he said it leads me to believe that I think he's trying to be too clever with the wording. And I think by saying, I didn't create a trust, what he means is maybe somebody else did, but he didn't know about it. But he can't keep saying things like that. If he was a very highly paid lawyer, as he said, he had £20,000 knocking about, and in those days, 15,000 was the average salary. So there's a lot of smelly things going on here, and he's going to need to explain it. Donkeys were on the field. The purpose of the purchase was so his parents could look after rescue donkeys, but they died in 2018, and he didn't sell it until 2022. It's an awful lot of questions, I'm afraid. What is the development potential of this field, says Wendy in Dover. A few houses on there would be a nice little earner, wouldn't it? Exactly right. And reminder from Lindsay in Newport, the Miliband brothers had their parents' house put into a trust to avoid inheritance tax. It was worth well over £1 million. Keep the donkey noises going. Most hilarious show ever. Listen, I can only do what you require and what you request. Let's talk to Simon. Oh no, voice note from Simon on youth unemployment.
Morning, Mike. Simon B, presently in France. I think we can make work for the young people very easily. I suggest we start a youth opportunity board, note the initials, as a Quango, and we put them all on the board of the Quango. Job done. Nice one.
Very good. I see what you did there. But how do you give them the money? Apparently they're going to tell them, if you don't take this job offer, we won't be giving you the same benefits. Well, good luck with that. Let's talk to Carl Williams, Research Director at the Centre for Policy Studies, because once again, migration not very far from our lips as we watch 125 people came over at the weekend on Saturday alone on one single super dinghy. They're now piling more and more people on, making it more and more dangerous. 2 women died, a child died as a result of the way they're overstuffing these dinghies now. Meanwhile, Shabana Mahmood is carrying out what can only be described by Keir Starmer as racist policies that she's copying from Reform, who he thinks are immoral. Apart from that, it's all going really, really well. Carl, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike.
Good to see you. No matter how much noise they make in Liverpool, and no matter how many policies they announce, the fact remains that we are now at record numbers for illegal migrants this year, and certainly it looks as though there's plenty more to come by the time we get to December.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we've had, 33,000 this year. That's up a third on last year. We've had 56,000 since Labour came to power. I guess average of 124 a day. If we carry on at this rate, we'll get another 180,000 by the end of the Parliament.
Yeah. I mean, it's extraordinary, isn't it, how hopeless this new government has been at stopping anything. If anything, every single time they make an announcement, actually more people come.
Yeah, I know. It's mad, isn't it? And I don't doubt Shabana Mahmood's sincere when she says she wants to stop the small boats and stop the crossings. But I don't see how she's going to be allowed to. Fundamentally, she's not going to be able to touch the human rights frameworks, which means when people arrive, they can't be removed. So she can talk about smashing the gangs, as Yvette Cooper did as Home Secretary before her. But it's not going to make much difference.
No, but the problem is the mixed messages that are coming out of the government. You know, Starmer yesterday, it does an interview with the BBC in which he effectively calls reforms policies racist. He effectively calls the people who vote for reform racist, even though he denies saying that. He certainly effectively calls the leadership of reform racist. But then you got the front page of the Telegraph today where Shabana Mahmood's speech later on to the Labour Party conference is going to say that they're going to reform the indefinite leave to remain rules. They're going to make sure that anyone who comes here has to be, in their words, a good citizen, has to have a spotless criminal record, has to have very good English, otherwise they won't be able to stay. Well, you know, that is not much different from what Reform was saying.
No, not much different from what Reform was saying, and not much different from what the Tories have been saying either.
No.
I think it's...
So they don't think that's racist, though?
Well, apparently not. I mean, it's... I think with Starmer and a lot of Labour politicians, they think that they are moral people, and if they're doing it, it's okay. It's only when evil Reform people are doing it that it's a problem.
Yeah, but the trouble is, people see through that now. You know, they've lost. Literally half of the people who voted for them are now saying they're going to vote Reform. Most of the people in the Labour Party think that Keir Starmer shouldn't be leader anymore because he's useless. Shabana Mahmood keeps talking about doing everything she can to crack down on illegal migration. If anything, it's gone up since she's been Home Secretary. You know, we've had several record days and a record month of September. More than 3,500 people have come in. They've managed to deport 6 people to France. You know, it's a joke, isn't it?
That's a joke. And what they don't seem to get is it's 2025, not 2005. As you say, people see through it now. People see through the spin. They don't trust politicians on this stuff because politicians have broken their promises again and again on migration.
Yeah. And so, I mean, at the end of this conference and at the end of the speech by Shabana Mahmood today, what's going to be different? Nothing, right?
No, I don't think so. I mean, again, I think the stuff it sounds like they're going to say on indefinite leave to remain is perfectly sensible. It's a bit, the horse has already bolted.
I think we're calling it the donkey today. The donkey's already bolted.
The donkey, yes.
That's the thing. Well, listen, good to talk to you. Thank you very much. Carl Williams, Research Director at the Centre for Policy Studies. As he says, the donkey's already bolted. There's nothing more that this government seems to be capable of doing. Let's get a voice note from Sean.
Morning, Mike. Sean from Grimsby. Listening to Keir Starmer chatting about his donkeys yesterday. You know what riles me the most, mate? The way he just dismisses, oh, Laura, it's only 20 grand. That's more than half of my yearly salary, and there's people in this country who are in a lot worse position than I am, and for him just to dismiss it as pittance, it's only 20 grand. This is champagne socialism at its finest. All of them should just resign because they're useless, dangerous, incompetent fools. Great show, Mike.
Sean, I can't disagree with any of that. Now it's become about his tax dodge, says Gurdeep. There will be another breaking news story to distract us from the tax dodging. No doubt there will. Simon in the Southwest. If this is true about the Prime Minister's trust and avoiding tax, this is beyond the pale. Are all this bunch also corrupt? Well, it's not the first time a Labour politician has found themselves in a scandal about avoiding tax and about putting things in trust. Nobody cares about that, right? It's just that they're so hypocritical about it because they tell everybody else not to do it. Paul from Manchester says that land that Starmer sold for his 4 donkeys, why didn't he build houses on it to house migrants? Well, why not? Indeed. Let's talk to Zia Youssef, who's right here with us. He is, of course, head of Doge at Reform UK. Zia, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
This Labour government goes from bad to worse. I couldn't quite believe my ears yesterday when Starmer gave his interview to Laura Kuenssberg. First of all, calling reforms policies racist, and then watching as his own Home Secretary pretty much copied all of it and said it wasn't racist at all. Then he turns out to have bought himself a donkey field for 20,000 quid, made £300,000 profit, and not paid any tax on it. What's going on?
Well, look, I think that's an apt summary. Look, the British people, Mike, are sick and tired of having their legitimate concerns about immigration being dismissed, being belittled, of being patronised, and ultimately being smeared as racist. And I tweeted out yesterday that smearing people who raise legitimate concerns about immigration as racist is the fresh new thinking that Keir Starmer has become famous for. And that is why, by the way, he is the most unpopular prime minister, according to a poll that came out this week, on record. On record. And when he made that statement, when he accused Reform of being racist, when he accused people who support the idea that migrants must pay their way and not commit crime in this country as being racist, look, he wasn't speaking to the voters. He was speaking to his own members at the conference, because there was a Survation poll this week where 53%, the majority of Labour members, want him to resign. They want him to resign. So look, Reform are the only party who are serious about saying British people deserve a secure border, who will uphold immigration law. And what we announced in terms of our ILR policy is very simple. We accept migrants in this country to pay their way, speak English, and not commit crime. The fact that that has driven this hysterical meltdown throughout the establishment, not just the government and Keir Starmer, but also a lot of the mainstream media, is just because they can feel their power finally starting to crumble around them, because the British people are waking up and they are no longer willing to fund a food bank for the world.
Exactly right. But of course, then you read the front page of the Times today, which it says immigrants face good citizen test to stay in the UK. Foreign citizens will have to volunteer in their community, have a spotless criminal record, speak English to a high standard, and be a net contributor to the economy to qualify for permanent settlement. Sorry, that sounds exactly like what you just said.
Does sound familiar. Like I've heard that kind of a policy very recently. I can't think where I heard it, but this is the craziness of the situation. Ultimately, there are some people at Number 10 behind the scenes who do understand where the British people are on these issues, but the metropolitan elite who ultimately make the decisions and run the party, of which Keir Starmer is the shining bright example, they look down on these views. They look down and sneer down the end of their noses at British people, ordinary people who say, look, those people listening to this program right now and on their way to work who think, I'm struggling to put food on my own kids' table. Why am I being forced to fund tens of billions and soon hundreds of billions of pounds in welfare payments for foreign nationals? It's unacceptable. And again, it is that craziness. It is this totally inept, totally detached perspective that this Labour government has, not unlike the Tories. Why Keir Starmer's popularity, he is the most unpopular Prime Minister already on record, and why, frankly, it's unlikely that he's going to last much longer in that post.
Yeah, and he's sort of flailing around now like a madman in a kind of the middle of an asylum. You know, they just take the straitjacket off and they're just kind of going, I know, let's build 12 new towns. I don't know, somewhere, there's one in Enfield there, there's somewhere, you know, let's talk to the housing secretary. He doesn't know how many houses they've built. He doesn't know where the money's coming from. He doesn't know when they're going to put spades in the ground. Then we've got Starmer saying he's not sure if they're going to put up VAT or not. They don't really know. They're going to give jobs to 18 to 20. I mean, it's literally like a drunk handing out money from his pocket.
Yeah, and this is exactly the same behaviour that Rishi Sunak exhibited during the general election, if you remember.
Yeah.
He said, oh, national service over here, completely ill thought out, took everyone surprised, or this random policy. This is what happens when you have politicians who don't stand for anything, who don't believe in anything, are unwilling to listen to what the British people actually want. I think your point about the housing minister, though, was fascinating, because we've now, for some time at Reform, been saying that the quality and calibre of cabinet minister the British people have been subjected to for the last few decades has been nothing short of atrocious. And that is why we're saying half of our cabinet around Nigel, if the British people choose to deliver the result of the ballot box where Reform have a majority and Nigel's the Prime Minister, half will be MPs, half won't be MPs, and whether they're MPs or not, they will be the brightest and best people in the country. And the idea that a housing secretary does not know how many houses have been built on his watch is one of the most unfathomable things to anybody who has ever been involved in or run a serious organization. And it is no surprise, therefore, that people listening to this program and watching it find it so difficult to even be able to rent a home. Just to be able to rent a home now is becoming a pipe dream for many people, let alone buy one. A third of our young adults, 19 to 32, now live with their parents. That is a record high because they cannot They cannot afford to even rent a home. We have a massive shortage, and we're certainly not going to fix that with the kind of clownish talent that we currently see in the cabinet that was on full display yesterday.
I know. And what did you make of this business of the donkey field? I mean, we're making fun of it this morning because it is kind of comical, but at the same time, incredibly hard to believe that a highly paid lawyer who himself admitted that he had £20,000 to lie around when the average salary was 15, he makes a £300,000 profit. He doesn't pay any tax on it, as far as we're aware, either capital gains or inheritance tax. And it turns out that he says he didn't put it into a trust. Every single tax expert says that's exactly what he did. He couldn't have done it any other way.
But Mike, you've got to remember who we're talking about here. We're talking about a man, as we learnt very shortly after he won the general election on the basis that he was going to be better than the Tories. This is a man who allowed a wealthy donor to buy his spectacles for him.
Yeah.
I mean, how many people listening to this program or watching this program would allow a wealthy donor to buy their designer spectacles for them? Allowed a donor to buy him expensive designer clothes, buy his partner expensive designer clothes. This is a man who clearly is the metropolitan elite, who does not think that the rules apply to him. And by the way, what makes this even worse is that pretty much the only reason he won the election was on the basis of all the sleaze, of all the scandals from the Tories, and that the only promise really that you could reasonably claim that he made in a meaningful way is that we were going to be better than that. And what he's ended up being is at least as bad, if not even worse. And look, we don't know all of the facts yet. And I think now what he's created is a much bigger, broader investigation from the media and from other people about what actually went on, whether that was a trust or not. Smart tax people on X, I've been reading what they've been saying, very well qualified tax people have been saying it looks like a trust, it smells like a trust. Keir Starmer saying it isn't a trust. He may well have opened up a can of worms for himself. Let's see.
I think so. And finally this morning, let me just get Reform's view. Officially, I mean, Nigel Farage quoted this morning as saying that Keir Starmer's claim that the Reform policy is racist is an insult to the millions of British people who just want the British government to get a grip on immigration. You know, is Nigel likely to say more on that today, do you think?
Well, we're going to keep saying the same thing. Reform will secure our borders. Reform will uphold immigration law. Reform believe British people, like all countries, deserve sovereignty over their nation, and that British people and their interests must come first. The fact that our policy, where we said we expect migrants in this country to pay their way, i.e. be a net contributor to the economy, to speak English and not commit crime, has elicited this insane, borderline psychotic, hysterical meltdown, speaks to the fact that we have lived through decades now of people running this country who lie to the electorate time and time again. Remember, British people voted time and again, whether it was Brexit, whether it was 4 consecutive Tory manifestos to cut immigration. And what happened? They got far more immigration. We are saying we're going to sort that out. We're going to be serious about immigration policy. And the only thing Labour have left, sadly, like much of the metropolitan elite, is to sneer at people who have those concerns and call them racist. Well, you know what? It simply won't work anymore.
Yeah. Zia Yusuf, thank you very much indeed. Head of Doge, of course, at Reform UK, answering to Keir Starmer's claims that Reform's immigration policy is racist. Of course, Labour's policy isn't going to be much different when it's announced by Shabana Mahmood later on today. This from Darryl says, morning, Mike. Donkeygate, the donkey may have bolted, but how long before the ass goes as well? Top show. And Eric says, so now it's Starmer, the donkey farmer.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 7:47. I'm Mike Graham. Under Libor's immigration policy, says Dave, of being able to speak English, does that mean Diane Abbott will be deported? Says Dave in Cold. Yeah, very good. I see what you did there. Here's one from Ian in Berkshire, in Bray. Mike, I was once offered a share in a donkey field near Bray in Berkshire. There you go. Well, funny you should say that, because I've just get some information from an expert that I know telling me that sometimes these trusts create themselves, which would mean that if Starmer was attempting to make out that he didn't create it, doesn't mean it wasn't a trust. But he can hide behind that on the basis that he'll say, well, if I didn't personally create it, I say I didn't create a trust. But everyone who knows anything about this stuff says it's a trust. Of course it is. Let's get a voice note from Mike on youth unemployment.
Morning, Mike. Mike here in Cheshire. Just a quick question. Rachel Reeves, she wants to find all these young people jobs. And yet, at the same time, she wants to open the doors to young people from Europe to come into this country and take all the jobs. I'm not sure that works. Have a good morning.
Yeah, you do wonder. Remember that phrase, joined up thinking? They don't seem to have any of that. So on the front page of the Mirror today, paid work for all jobless young people. That's all jobless young people. So if any of them are on the dole, they get told, here's a job for you. If you don't want it, I will take your benefits away. Meanwhile, where are all these jobs coming from? Because unfortunately, as you just rightly heard there from the voice note, it looks like she wants to encourage loads of people from Europe to come and do jobs here. So, I mean, you'd think this was some kind of jobs haven, some bonanza of jobs going on. Well, there aren't any jobs, are there? Let's talk to Philip Ingram, MBE, former senior military intelligence officer, because quite a few things have occurred over the weekend that we need to chat to him about. To wit, Britain apparently is going to build a drone wall to protect Europe from Russia. There's been a bit of jiggery-pokery in the air above NATO countries, as well as an ex-spy chief this morning from MI5 rather, Baroness Manningham-Buller, basically saying that the UK is already at war with Russia on cyber attacks, on sabotage and covert operations on British soil. Philip, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
This all sounds a bit serious to me. There's obviously a lot of what you might call machinations, I suppose, a lot of posing of threats and counter threats going on at the moment from the Russian side about NATO countries and flying planes over, airspace and all of that. But what about this drone wall? Is that realistic?
Oh, it's very realistic. It's building on technology that Ukraine has is deploying in Ukraine itself, creating anti-drone drones effectively. And the UK is already manufacturing drones that it's sending to Ukraine. And Ukraine is now investing in opening a Ukrainian company in the UK to manufacture even more drones. So it's a good swap of technology and good swap of manufacturing capability.
Right. And I mean, in terms of drone warfare, it's obviously kind of something that's relatively new in military quarters. Is it something that's advancing at a rate of knots? Like 1 minute we've got these kind of drones, the next minute we're going to have some super drones or something.
Yeah, it's advancing very fast indeed, and it's not just drones that fly; it's drones in the sea. We look at Ukraine, who doesn't really have a navy, but they've managed to decimate, the largest navy in the Black Sea, and effectively force it into port. And drone technology is changing enormously. The biggest change we're now seeing is the use of drones that are controlled by fibre optic cables that they trail out for 10 or 15 kilometres behind them, so that it means that they're not being controlled electronically, where the electronics can be jammed.
Right. Fascinating. And what about this claim in the front page of the Times today by Baroness Manningham-Buller, former head of MI5, saying that we're kind of already involved in quite a significant war with Putin?
We're in a state of conflict. War brings legal definitions with it. But, if we think back to 2018, we had the poisoning of Sergei Skripal with Novichok in Salisbury. Before that, we had the poisoning of Alexander Litvinenko on the streets of London with polonium-210, a radiological agent. We have seen DHL warehouses with explosive devices in them before they've been loaded onto aircraft. We've seen warehouses in London catch fire. We have had assassinations. We have had hundreds of cyber attacks. And now the hybrid threat is growing. The information war is huge. And Eliza Manningham-Buller is right in what she is suggesting. I think the use of the word war is a little bit too strong.
Interesting. Meanwhile, we've got a meeting, I think, today in the White House between Benjamin Netanyahu and Donald Trump, which we'll see where that goes. But clearly, you know, Trump's still trying to figure out what to do about the Middle East.
Well, yes, and I think everyone's trying to work out what happens in the Middle East. You know, Trump turned around and said he was very close to a peace deal with Hamas, but we haven't heard any more details than that. I think what Trump will be trying to do is rein Netanyahu in a little bit. If he can do that with Netanyahu's activities in the West Bank, that will help enormously, because that is what's undermining Israel's activities inside Gaza. And you know, he's not going to defeat Hamas militarily. So there has to be some form of pressure put on him to come up with an end state. There's no definition of an end state yet.
No.
That's militarily achievable.
Okay. Philip, good to see you. Thanks very much indeed. Philip Ingram, MBE, former senior military intelligence officer. David says, it's all this inheritance tax. I don't know what the farmers are going to say. Well, there's plenty of farmers demonstrating outside Liverpool conference at the moment for Labour, so we'll see what they've got to say to him. Damon from Wigan says, Starmer does have a donkey field, and I've seen the proof. It's called the Labour Party, and there sure is a lot of donkeys there. Absolutely right. And Maggie says, Mike, another Monday, another scandal. You could say we're led by donkeys. I wouldn't discredit those beautiful animals, though. They got more sense than anyone in the cabinet, that's for sure. Talk about Donkey Gate. What an absolute donkey Keir Starmer's turning out to be. 7:53.
People flying from their cars and homes. Keir Starmer himself described all immigration legislation as racist, so he chucks that word around rather too loosely. The fact is, reform policies are nonsense and undeliverable, but he is trying to make himself sound tough, and frankly, I don't think anyone's buying it.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. Faye says this. Morning, Mike. Starmer loves to throw his friends and family under the bus as soon as there's a scandal about him, doesn't he? His kids during the Lord Alley thing and his mum over the trust. Says a lot, doesn't it? Yeah, absolutely right. The problem with Keir Starmer is he thinks everybody else is stupid and he thinks that he can get away with saying practically anything he likes because everybody else doesn't know what he knows. Well, basically, this, I'm told, is an implied trust. It means that whether or not he created it physically by writing a load of papers out and by signing things, the trust was created just by the actions that he took. So he knows exactly what he's doing. So by telling Laura Kuenssberg that he didn't create a trust, he's kind of being what we might call, shall we say, economical with the truth. This one from Paul. He says, morning, Mike. I'm a bit stuck with my words this morning in disbelief. My wife told me about Starmer. I said, he ought to know better. Very good. Let's have a look at what he had to say yesterday about how he's going to stop illegal working with his ridiculous digital ID.
My sweatshop.
Absolutely convinced that amongst the reasons that people travel through France, which is a safe country, to come to the United Kingdom, amongst the reasons is because it's easier to work in our illegal economy than it is in other countries. And we have to deal with that.
Bosses who are prepared to hire people illegally are not asking them for their national insurance card. So what's the evidence? What makes you think they're suddenly going to ask them for a digital ID?
We need to be really clear. You must have ID, mandatory digital ID, in order to work, because we have to stop illegal working. As I announced this week, digital ID, so that we are clear in the principle that you cannot work in the United Kingdom if you do not have ID.
How many people?
Because too many people are able to get into the black economy and work illegally in this country, and we need to deal with that and deal with that effectively.
So he doesn't really explain how it's going to stop people coming. You know, record numbers have come, as we know. 33,078 migrants arrived in 2025 since the beginning of this year. Over 1,000 came just in one day a couple of weeks ago, and more than 3,000 have come in September alone. So far, how many have we managed to get out to France? 6. Exactly right. Absolutely ridiculous, isn't it? So many people got so much to say about all of this, because it is incredibly ridiculous that we've got a business leader in the Labour Party conference who's never run a business. We've got Keir Starmer, who's pretending he didn't start a trust for his parents, even though it looks though that's what he did. We've got Steve Reed, the housing guy, who doesn't know how many houses he's built. You know, the list goes on and on. Shabana Mahmood, who's copying Reform's policy, which our own leader says is racist. It's going really well up in Liverpool. We'll be crossing live there to Poppy Coburn from the Daily Telegraph. Coming next.
My message to people smugglers is this.
I think smashing the gangs is a deterrent. Smash the gangs. Smash the people smuggling gangs.
People schmiggling puns.
He couldn't even smash an avocado for a piece of toast.
Or the people... What would that... The people...
I think smashing the gangs is a deterrent. Well, it might be if you smashed any, if you found any.
The people smash... The smash...
And he hasn't smashed anything. I mean, literally all he does is he smashes records every sort of couple of weeks, where more and more people come in a period of 24 hours.
Smash the gangs that are running this vile trade.
You're never going to smash the gangs. That's something that basically is impossible. The gangs are like the Hydra. You cut the head off and another 2 grow.
So I did write to ministers and say that I wasn't convinced that smashing the gangs was the right sort of way of thinking about things.
We will smash the gangs that undermine our security.
Keir Starmer has just tweeted 15 minutes ago. He says, I know you're angry about immigration. I get it. We will smash the people smuggling gangs at source. Maybe I'll just read it all in his accent, shall I?
There is no return to freedom of movement. We have left the EU. I do not accept that prevents us working with other police units here, with prosecutors here, to smash the gangs.
Well, sure, this
smuggling gangs are absolutely quaking in their boots now. Keir Starmer's on their case. Solving this issue, smashing the gangs, is that the impossible dream, Tom?
It really seems beyond him at the minute, I have to say.
We're going to get the evil people smugglers and we're going to smash them and we're going to put them in jail. That will solve the migrant crisis.
Prime Minister Keir Starmer's promise to smash the gangs has resulted in just 5 convictions. Hurrah for operating small boats.
So what he really wants to say is that this policy of smashing the gangs is a total and utter disaster. There isn't a cat in hell's chance that it's going to work.
It's crap. It's crap. That's what he's basically saying.
I know you're angry about immigration. I get it. Mark my words, I will take back control of our borders. That means cutting migration, ending the use of asylum hotels and ramping up our efforts to stop small boat crossings.
It's like a parallel universe, the real world, as told by the impressive David Bolt, and Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves' fantasy world.
We will smash the people smuggling gangs at source.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, coming up to 3 minutes past 8. The sun is up and the mist has lifted, it would have to be said. This morning over the river, it was a very, very gloomy looking start. You could barely see any of the bridges, you could barely see into the sky, you could barely see the street lamps. It was that murky, but it was rather kind of enveloping in some ways because it was a sign again that summer is well and truly over, and autumn is very much definitely in the ephemeral. It's going on, and so you might want to wear a coat if you go out. It's a little bit colder than it was so far this year. Coming up in this hour, we're going to talk to Poppy Coburn. She's assistant comment editor at Telegraph. She's live up in Liverpool at Labour Party conference, which started yesterday with what can only be said to be an entire kind of Tower of Babel of contradictions. You know, you had first of all Keir Starmer going out to speak to Laura Kuenssberg on the BBC in the morning, talking about how reforms policies on immigration were racist. He also called them immoral. Shortly thereafter, Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, came out and actually said that she was going to adopt quite a lot of reforms policies on immigration, including basically foreign citizens were having to volunteer in their community, having to have a spotless criminal record, having to speak English to a high standard and be a net contributor to the economy to qualify for permanent settlement. She also said they were going to toughen their policy on indefinite leave to remain, rather like reform, and in fact they'd be throwing people out who shouldn't be here. So, in many ways, that's the first problem. Second problem, of course, is Rachel Reeves. She's speaking today about how she's going to create a job for every 18 to 21-year-old in this country. How she's going to do it, she doesn't say. We've got Steve Reed, the Housing Secretary, saying they're going to build 1.5 million houses. They're going to create 12 new towns. They don't really know where, they don't really know how, and they don't really know when. By the date that's going to happen. So there's all sorts of rubbish going on. Meanwhile, of course, you've got Nigel Farage hitting back, basically saying that what Keir Starmer said is an insult to millions of people who just want immigration under control in this country. And quite frankly, you have to find yourself agreeing with him. An awful lot of people here asking the question as well, what is going on with this donkey field that Keir Starmer claims he didn't actually buy and put into a trust? We've got Donkey Gate all over the place. Donkey Kong running this morning on the show because, let's face it, while 56,320 people have entered this country under Keir Starmer's watch illegally by small boat, just on Saturday, one super dinghy with 125 people on it, the biggest number ever, arrived on our shores, and God knows where those people are. They haven't been detained, they haven't been deported. Only 6 people have been sent back to France. Meanwhile, he had 4 donkeys, right? Buys a field in 1998 or something like that for £20,000. He then sells it many years later, 2022, for £320,000. He says he didn't put it in a trust, but everybody who knows about trusts and who knows about tax says it's in a trust. So he's obviously being economical with the truth at the very least. Absolutely extraordinary stuff. 0344 499 1000. It's all going wrong in Liverpool. There's a talk. And many of you have got lots to say about this donkey business, not least the amount of money that he spent. He said, oh, I was rich, I was a lawyer, I had plenty of money, so I spent 20,000, more than the actual annual average income at the time. OK, let's have a listen to what Fee has to say.
Little donkey, enjoy your lovely home. Little donkey, now b*** off, because I'm going to sell it and make loads of money.
There's something wrong with this story, isn't there? There really is. You can tell. I can tell. You can smell it. Poppy Coburn's here, assistant commentator at Telegraph. Poppy, very good morning to you.
Good morning, although I wouldn't say it's one of the best mornings I've had because I'm at Labour conference.
Yeah, I know, but at least there's some comedy value, I'm assuming. I mean, they all seem to be fighting like rats in a sack. You've got Andy what's his face, saying that there's a culture of fear. Andy Burnham, the Manchester mayor, saying people aren't allowed to say what they think. They're not allowed to differ from the policies of the government. You know, otherwise they get the whip taken away. I mean, he obviously is like the spectre at the feast here, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, as much as I like the idea of Keir Starmer as a kind of Stalinist apparatchik, you know, whipping people down for trying to speak their mind, I think the reality is that Andy Burnham has been very much on manoeuvres. And I've said it before and I'll say it again, you know, this is a government that's been in power for 14 months. And it's acting like the Tories did after 14 years in power. You know, just the degree of kind of acrimonious infighting is almost unbelievable. It's difficult to get behind how much people hate other people within their own party who seem to have policies that are almost indistinguishable from each other. They're all at each other's throats, and I think it's because they know how unpopular they've become in the wider country, and Keir Starmer is a bit of a lightning rod for that frustration.
Right. I mean, he does seem to be uniting people behind hatred of him. You know, everybody seems to hate Keir Starmer, no matter what side of the political divide they're on.
Yeah, I mean, I have to agree. I was walking in yesterday about midday, and there was a massive protest happening outside the conference. And, you know, I can't repeat what was said on some of the signs because they were a little bit strongly worded. But I think it's safe to say that they weren't very happy with Keir Starmer. You know, and that's just people from the outside who are angry about digital ID, angry about what he's done with the family farm tax. But even within the conference, you know, you can see the rumblings from the people still in the left of the party, or the Burnham wing, if you want to call them that, who are very, very frustrated at just how unpopular this government has become so quickly.
Yeah, and also, you know, the ridiculousness yesterday of Keir Starmer's interview with Laura Kuenssberg, where he basically called Reform voters racist, even though he says he didn't. You know, he certainly called Reform's policies racist and immoral, only to then be seen by his own Home Secretary later on in the afternoon adopting some of those same policies.
Yeah, I mean, Shabana Mahmood is going to be giving a speech today on immigration, and we're expecting her to basically lift almost in its entirety Reform's ILR plans. Again, she's just been shuffled into this role. I think she's been in this role for about 3 weeks now. How is she already being contradicted by her Prime Minister, who is supposed to be a close ally of hers? You know, if he's coming out and saying that Reform voters are extremist, or, you know, Farage is flirting with some kind of racist idea about immigration policy, you can't then have your Home Secretary address the party hall and say, oh, well, about that racist extremist, he's got some really good ideas on border control.
I know, and that seems to be the thing, that they don't have a way of coordinating their thoughts. They don't seem to have a way. You know, Steve Reid yesterday made a complete fool of himself, unable to say how many houses that he had built as the housing secretary, unable to say where these new towns are going to be, you know, apart from some sort of loose suggestion that, oh, there's one near Enfield, another one up near Leeds somewhere, oh, you know, we're going to build 1.5 million. He doesn't have the wherewithal, he doesn't have the money, he doesn't have the raw materials, doesn't even have the builders. And yet they're just kind of flailing around saying this stuff as if it's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you saw he was wearing that ridiculous bucket hat on stage.
Yeah.
I actually managed to get a version of that bucket hat. It was very, very cheaply made, and if that doesn't exactly bode well for these new towns that Labour's going to be making if they can't even make a nice bucket hat. But yeah, again, it seems to be, we're at that stage in the government where ministers seem to be operating almost in their own domains. There's no top-down direction from number 10, which is, I think, the reason why someone like Burnham is allowed to talk about this kind of rebellious language about getting rid of the Prime Minister.
And do you think part of that problem is that Morgan McSweeney's grip on the cabinet has kind of loosened because of all the scandals surrounding his own situation with his electoral commission investigation, which they don't really want to do, and that he's obviously trying to shut down. But the fact that Morgan McSweeney can no longer control probably the cabinet, and certainly not the rest of the party, is having an effect on its effectiveness, if you like.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, again, I think we've seen his own ally, you know, who, aside from Keir Starmer, Shabana Mahmood, she's been really sidelined. You know, that is very much one of his protégés. They've known each other for years and years now. She's quite blue Labour inflected, which is why the government kind of presented her as she's going to be the one that gets tough on immigration. But this soft left faction absolutely despises him. And I think, you know, again, they've been briefing very hard against him. They've seen an area of weakness because of that. I think it was £734,000 of money in slightly dodgy donations that helped get Starmer into the position of Prime Minister in the first place. And they're going on the attack because they just don't think he's doing a very good job of directing the ideological direction of the Labour Party.
No, he's absolutely not. And then this latest kind of, I mean, it just goes from bad to worse in terms of comedy value. You know, this idea about the field full of donkeys that he got for his parents. Just have a look at what he said, because I think his face at the end of this shows he's terrified. This is how he bought the field.
I was a lawyer, I had quite a lot of money. I bought a field for £20,000 at the back of their house, and I said, here's your field, it's yours for as long as you may live, you can put your donkeys in it.
That's because that's been
I didn't create the trust, I simply bought a field, and I said to Mum and Dad, this is for you.
Okay.
It was, and also, by the way, Laura, it was £20,000. We're not looking at a vast estate with great tax.
It's a lot of money to many people, and it's sold it many years later
It is a lot of money, but the idea of setting up some complicated trust for a £20,000 agricultural field, which then housed 4 donkeys for all the time my mum and dad. It was my mum. She was able. They had a little outhouse at the edge of the field, and she was able, in the end, to see the donkeys. And my dad built a little sort of porchway so he could wheel the wheelchair out so she could touch the donkeys. That's what it was for, and I gave it to them. I had enough money at the time because I was a lawyer. It was a gift to my mum and dad.
And that's now on the record. You did not put it in trust, and that's not been on the record before, and that is now on the record.
And his face when she says that kind of shows you what he's worried about. He says it was a gift to his mum and dad. It wasn't a gift because he didn't declare it as a gift, because if he had, it would have been subject to inheritance tax very possibly later when he made 300,000 quid. He kept it, and it was a loan, which is basically an implied trust. And everybody who knows anything about these things, and I've been speaking to them this morning, have told me that, right? He also then says, you know, that it was something that he wanted to do for his parents because £20,000 wasn't very much money. In 1996, £20,000 was more than the average salary of an average worker in this country.
I mean, it must have been a massive field. I can't kind of imagine how many donkeys there must have actually been on this field. 4 seems quite few.
Yeah.
I mean, this whole story, like, kind of Starmer's like, you know, he's exasperated. Like, why are you even bothering to ask me about this donkey field I bought for my parents? It's classic Labour. It's the same thing that Angela Rayner did.
Yeah.
You know, if you're going to propose rules for the rest of the country, you better be Mr. Squeaky Clean.
Yeah.
You would be acting exactly to the letter of the law. What you can't do is when a story does come out that raises questions about your propriety, you know, kind of throw your arms up in the air and go, why are you asking me this question? I just did a nice thing for my parents.
Right.
You know, that is not a good justification.
No, and it gives away the fact that he's been a very wealthy man. Again, nothing wrong with that, but it's a hypocrisy of it, of asking everybody else not to avoid paying tax when he's clearly been avoiding paying tax.
Yeah, and also coming after Farage, you know, a couple of weeks ago for him apparently, you know, buying this house in his constituency and trying to raise concerns over that. Again, it's like, don't throw stones if you're living in a glass house. You don't throw stones across your donkey field. And so, yes, of course he's going to be mocked for this. Of course people are going to be asking him questions about this. It is quite a funny story.
It's a hilarious story.
Just the donkey element alone is worth talking about.
Well, this is why we're doing it. We've been playing donkey noises all morning. You know, people are saying to me, you know, what happened to the donkeys when he sold the field? You know, and the fact that he sold it in 2022 and made such a massive profit, you know, he must have sold it for some kind of redevelopment scheme, you would imagine, because you can't get that kind of money from just selling it as arable farming land. And so I think there's a lot more to come out on this one.
Yes, exactly. And again, it's just Number 10 is having more stories starting to kind of leak out. I mean, I guess we could have seen the direction of the government from the very beginning with the Lord Ali, you know, cash for dressing scandal at the beginning. You know, they presented themselves as being not like the Tories, there's no sleaze, you know, we're above it all. And lo and behold, they're not.
No. And the Sun this morning are calling the whole situation up there a bit of a calamity, which I rather like, because nothing's really going right for them. And while they try to make out that there's this united front, you know, meanwhile, every figure that comes in, you know, Nigel Farage is going to win by a landslide, Keir Starmer, the most unpopular Prime Minister ever, more than half of his own party don't want him to be in charge anymore. I mean, it's an absolute nightmare.
it's just such a contrast as well from last year, where, you know, they had just won the election.
Yeah.
Although there were slight scandals at the time, there was a bit of... People were generally feeling like, look, we've got 4 years left in power, you know, or 5 years actually left in power then. You know, we're going to be able to smooth out these rough edges. Now, again, it just feels like the Liz Truss era of the Conservative Party.
Yeah.
Everyone's running around pointing the finger, playing the blame game. They know that the public hate them. I mean, there was a poll a couple of days ago that said Keir Starmer is the least popular Prime Minister in the history of this country. I mean, that is really quite an achievement of being in power for 14 months, that you are now the most unpopular Prime Minister in the history of this country. And Rachel Reeves is the most unpopular Chancellor in the history of this country. You know, how they have managed to achieve that, I actually don't know. I know they've been incompetent, but the scale of hatred that is directed towards them on behalf of British people is just unbelievable.
Yeah, it's true. But it's their sheer incompetence, I think, that people have become so angered by and disillusioned by, because everything they do has the opposite effects of what they want it to do. You know, so today she's going to get up and say that she's going to offer jobs to every single 18 to 21-year-old. Well, anybody who's got an 18 to 21-year-old, which I have, will tell you there aren't any jobs. You know, they literally can't find jobs to do, even just part-time jobs. So where are all these jobs coming from?
Well, also, I mean, Rachel Reeves is suggesting a youth mobility scheme with Europe. I mean, these are two completely contradictory policies.
Yeah.
So there's no jobs for young people, but also we're going to bring more young people into the UK to compete for the jobs that we don't actually have. You know, again, there's no joined-up thinking whatsoever. They're just throwing policies out there into the void and hoping that one of them will actually be popular. And then when they're not popular and they get backlash, they're just like, right, quick, moving on, let's come up with another idea. There is absolutely no strategy behind this stuff.
No, it's a complete disaster. But anyway, listen, at least it must be keeping you entertained in some way, shape or form. But there's no shortage of stuff to write about. So very good to see you. Thank you very much for joining us. Poppy Coburn there, assistant comment editor at The Telegraph. This from John in Poole. What a laugh on your show today, Mike. I wonder what happened to the donkeys when Starmer sold the land. This government gets more bizarre by the day. It really does. And Tony says this, will Lammy, Burnham and McFadden be part of Starmer's Three Wise Men's Christmas edition featuring some goats with a donkey? Well, you do wonder, don't you? And Steve from Mansfield, please don't be disrespectful to donkeys, comparing them to Starmer. What a terrible thing to do. Here's a voice note from Dale.
Hi, Mike. Great show as always. I don't often disagree with you. However, there are jobs out there. I think it's more a fact that there's certain people in society that don't want to do the jobs that are out there. For me personally, I'm currently in between jobs. I've gone out and I've got a little, you know, job to get me by until something more long-term permanent comes up. I think it's the, you know, if you've got the get up and go with it. But more often than not, the get up and go's got up and gone. And I do think that the younger generation are lazy these days. Dale from Stenning. Cheers, mate.
Dale, Dale, thank you very much indeed. Listen, I don't doubt what you say is true, but I think it very much depends on where you are in the country, one, and I think it also depends on what qualifications you might have, two. There certainly doesn't appear to me to be a whole host of jobs in all kinds of areas, in different kinds of areas, and for people who are not particularly well qualified to do anything, there's not much going on. Because, of course, as well as all the illegal migrants who are working illegally in the sort of low-paying jobs, the low-hanging fruit type jobs, you're not going to get into that. I mean, imagine trying to get a job driving around in one of these food delivery bikes. You got no chance, you know, because one, you'll be competing with people who are working for an awful lot less money, and they'd rather hire somebody else and pay them less money than pay you. So we'll talk about it, though. If you've got more information for me on that, by all means, let me know. And here's one from Mike, who says, Shabana Mahmood says that you have to have a spotless criminal record for becoming a British citizen. How can breaking into our country count as a spotless criminal record? Well, that's a very good question. It's 8:20.
what you're asking me to do is comment on an arrest. Now, that's an active legal case.
No, it's not.
I'm not.
No, it's not, because they haven't charged him.
I used to teach law for journalists, and I know that you don't say anything about active legal cases.
It's not an active legal case because he hasn't been charged. He's been arrested but not charged. Christine, he has been arrested but not charged. There are no active legal proceedings.
In Scotland, when you're arrested, it becomes an active case.
Okay, well, I'm in London. Okay, Christine.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, coming up to 24 minutes past 8. The sun is up. The day actually looks not bad at the moment, but it depends, of course, on which part of the country you're in. We've been talking this morning about all the stories relating and revolving around the Labour Party conference up in Liverpool. Today, you've got Rachel Reeves making a speech. We've got Shabana Mahmood going to be talking about some policies that she's going to be introducing, i.e. to wit. You have to be a good citizen if you want to come here to this country. You have to have a clean criminal record, a spotless criminal record, no doubt. You have to be able to speak English to a high standard. You have to be a net contributor to the economy to qualify for, at the very least, permanent settlement, possibly indefinite leave to remain, which is going to be changed from a 5-year qualification to a 10-year qualification. All sounds a bit like what Reform are doing, which, of course, Keir Starmer called a racist just before. The petition against ID cards is now over 2.4 million already, says Stewart. Reg says Starmer has fired more of his own cabinet members than he's deported illegals. Probably true. Now, we don't normally do this, but Jack Elsom is going to be talking to us now because he's up at Labour Party conference for The Sun, and he's going to be speaking to James Murray, Cabinet Minister, of course. We don't normally speak to Labour Cabinet Ministers only because they don't come on, but they're coming on to speak to Jack Elsom. Jack, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. Well, you're right. I'm here up in Liverpool, a very sunny day at the Labour Party conference, and I'm here with the newly promoted Chief Secretary to the Treasury, James Murray. Good morning.
Good morning.
I do want to talk about what your boss, the Chancellor, is going to be saying in her speech a bit later, but can we just circle back to something Mike was talking about? How is it racist for a policy for migrants who come to this country to contribute to this country?
Well, no, look, what Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, is going to be setting out today is our policy about making sure that people who want to get indefinite leave to remain, to stay in this country, will have to contribute to society. They'll have to have a spotless criminal record. They'll have to have contributed national insurance. They'll have to have not claimed benefits. They'll have to have a high proficiency in English. That's what we mean by contribution, and we think that's a fair change to make to the immigration system and extending the period that you have to wait before you can apply from 5 to 10 years. Now, that's the kind of reform that we want to make the immigration system, to change it, to make it work better. We think it's the right kind of proportionate approach. What Reform have been saying in terms of their approach to the immigration system, not only did it start falling apart within minutes of being announced when they were questioned on any of the detail of it, but it also means that people would be torn out of communities across the country. So people with families here, people who have worked in businesses or public services, maybe people who set up their own business, they would be torn out of communities. So it's a very different approach. And I think, look, people in Britain have a fundamental sense of fairness and balance. People want a fairer, tougher approach to migration. That's what we're offering. People recognise that the Reform policy went far too far.
But as far as I can see, the only main difference between the two policies is that Reform is saying that they would scrap independent leave to remain. People who currently have independent leave to remain will be subject to rolling 5-year visas. How is that racist? It might be unfair if they've already been granted it, but how is it racist?
Well, what it would be doing under the plan that Reform set out about indefinite leave to remain is saying that people who had been here for years and years and contributing to society could suddenly be taken out of society and forced to leave Britain. And we think that
How is that racist? How is that racism?
It would be
Do you think it's racist?
It would be incredibly disruptive.
Would you repeat that being a racist policy?
Well, we said that policy is a racist policy, and it's immoral and it's unworkable. But the point is, Jack, it would have a real damage on our country if you tore all those people out of our country who contribute to our public services, who contribute to businesses, who've been paying their taxes. But people should pay their taxes. People should contribute to society. And we're saying, if you want indefinite leave to remain, you have to wait a bit longer, you have to contribute, you have to speak English well, and that's what people expect.
And Nigel Farage is saying that if you get indefinite leave to remain and then can't support yourself and go into benefits, that's when you face being deported. And you disagree with that, do you? Well, so under your policy, someone could have a job, get indefinite leave to remain, suddenly then lose their job, and then rely on the state for the rest of their life. Is that fair?
Well, the point is that we're saying you have to have a level of contribution before you even get it in the first place. So we're saying rather than waiting 5 years, you should wait 10 years, and in order to get indefinite leave to remain in the first place, you should have been contributing to society, paying your taxes, not claiming benefits, have a spotless criminal record, have a high degree of English proficiency. All of that you should have before you even claim indefinite leave to remain under our system.
Isn't there a danger with this, though? You can talk about the merits of reform policy and the ethics of it and the morality of it, but if you start chucking out words like racism, you actually surrender your stake in reasoned political debate, and I think that's what many people thought Keir Starmer did yesterday.
Well, no, I think that we have to have a reasonable debate around how to tackle immigration, because, look, we think immigration has been too high for many years in Britain. We think there are far too many people in asylum hotels. We think there are far too many people coming across the channel in small boats. All of that we are tackling. There is no silver bullet. We know that this is something which takes a lot of action on a lot of fronts over an extended period of time. It's not something you can click your fingers and fix overnight. But we have to make sure immigration comes down, because that's what people want.
The Oxford English Dictionary definition of racism is discriminatory against an ethnic or racial group. Do you think Nigel Farage himself is a racist?
I think the policy is racist. We're not accusing individual politicians or even that whole party of being racist, but we're saying that policy, that approach is, as we said, immoral, racist, unworkable. That's what we're saying. And actually, what's important here is that people want practical, fair but firm solutions. And I think British people have a real sense of fairness, and people want to see a policy that works, that's fair, and that takes tough action to make things change. And that's exactly what we're setting out. So we're not pulling our punches. We're saying, look, if you want to come in this country, if you want to have indefinite leave to remain, you have to speak English. You have to have contributed. No criminal record. No claiming benefits. All of that should be the baseline. And that's what
the two policies are remarkably similar. And I think a lot of people do find it quite funny and ironic that the day that Keir Starmer called Nigel Farage's policy racist, the Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood is unveiling her policies, which seem exactly the same. And the only main difference is that one is retrospective and one is not. Yeah, but the retrospective is not the borderline between racism and not racism, is it?
No, but hang on. I think that people in Britain have a really, deeply ingrained sense of fairness. And what is the right approach? What is the proportionate response to the situation we face? So we know that immigration is too high. We know we want it to come down. What is the right way to tackle that? And I think people will look at what Shabana is setting out today, and they will say, yeah, that works. That is a fair approach. Learn English. Make sure you can speak it properly. Make sure you're contributing to society. Make sure you're not claiming benefits. No criminal record. All of that, I think people will say, yep, that feels right. I think people will look at the reform approach as saying, take people out of communities when they've been here for many years, when they've got families, when they've been working in businesses, contributed to public services, and say, you know what, that goes too far. That's not in the right place.
Can we talk about what your boss, the Chancellor, is going to say in her speech today?
Sure.
Is she finally going to level with Brits that tax is going to have to go up in the autumn budget?
Well, the autumn budget is going to be on November the 26th, and what we've said we want to achieve above all else is to get the economy growing. And look, if you look at the first half of this year, we've had the highest growth in the G7.
Not so good for the past few quarters, though, has it?
Well, look, we know that the global economy is in a difficult place, but that's why it's even more important that we put Britain in as strong a place as possible. So if you look at the cost of borrowing around the world, for instance, there is pressure on them. That's why it's so important that we have our fiscal rules, which are non-negotiable, which provide that bedrock of stability in the economy. And everything that the Chancellor will announce the budget, I can't preempt what she's going to say, but I do know that she will stick to her fiscal rules absolutely.
Which means you're not going to put borrowing up for day-to-day spending, so you can't increase borrowing. Growth's not going to ride to your rescue because it hasn't been that good in the last few months. You said you're not going to make serious spending cuts, and you bottled £5 billion of welfare savings earlier this year, so the only thing that you can really do is put taxes up. Isn't it right now? You level to viewers and you level to listeners and say, actually, it's probably best that you start saving for this.
Well, look, the part that you missed there, Jack, is that at the budget, the Office of Budget Responsibility, an independent forecaster, they'll set out a forecast of growth. So they're doing their work right now to set out their forecasts, and then any measures that the Chancellor wants to announce will be tested against those forecasts. So the OBR does their work now to set out sort of the baseline, if you like, and the Chancellor sets out her measures that she wants to take to improve the economy, to get growth up and to make sure the economy works better for working people.
Why did the Prime Minister not rule out a rise in VAT at the budget?
Well, the Prime Minister said that our manifesto stands, and he's very clear about that. And
I've been around long enough to know that the manifesto stands is what often politicians use to get out. It stands right now. Is it going to stand in 2 months' time?
It's in our manifesto, and we stick by it. And actually, if you look at what we did at the budget last year, we were very clear about VAT, about national insurance, on working people's payslips, around income tax. And what you know will drive us as a party is making sure that we make life as better as we can for working people. You know, we asked, if you look at the budget last year, we asked those with the broadest shoulders to pay their fair share. But this is all in the service of making sure that public services are back on their feet, that public finances are on an even keel, and that we can boost investment in the economy, because getting that investment in the economy is so critical for growth, and that growth.
And one last question. The welfare bill is currently £195 billion. You bottled £5 billion of welfare savings a few months ago. Are you going to have another stab at that? And how much do you want to drive the welfare bill down?
Well, we're already reforming welfare. We're already trying to get more people into work. There's already a review about how personal independence payments will work. You know,
but how much specifically do you want to get the welfare bill down by?
Well, look, we've got to make a system that works. And actually, the first crucial thing...
A third?
Can I just say, the first crucial thing to getting people off benefits is to get people into work. And if you look at the youth guarantee that the Chancellor is announcing today, the youth guarantee will say that any young person who's on universal credit for 18 months without having a job or training, they will be offered a guaranteed work placement to get them into work. Because what is totally unacceptable is having young people who are out of the world of work, who never get a job, and base a life on benefits. That's unacceptable, and that's what's going to end.
And is Keir Starmer tough enough to push this through? A pretty squeamish Labour parliamentary party who ambushed him at the last time said that he couldn't put through welfare cuts. Is he tough enough to drive that through again?
Keir Starmer is one of the toughest politicians I know, and when he works with Rachel Reeves, you know, I know that they will keep working together to make sure that we do the change that we promised we would in this country. Now, that doesn't always mean it's easy. It doesn't always mean that everyone agrees with every bit of change that we do. But you know what? If we were elected just to maintain the status quo, we wouldn't be doing our job very well. You know, we need to make sure we're making that change, bringing people with us, but making a real difference to people's lives.
Brilliant. All right, James Murray, thank you very much. We'll see what the Chancellor has to say in her big speech later. Mike, you heard things there about whether James Murray thinks that what Nigel Farage said was racist yesterday. He stands by what the Prime Minister said. Many viewers will think that is a bit much. Obviously, the Chancellor's big speech coming up later. Welfare, where's that going to be cut? Many people want it to be. Taxes, are they going up? Many people will probably think they are.
Yeah, the trouble is, Jack, they always say things that make sense when they say them in their own heads, but when everybody's listening to them, they don't make sense. You know, for example, the jobs guarantee is not a jobs guarantee. They're saying they'll give somebody a work placement if they haven't done anything for 18 months. That's not the same as giving them a job. In the same way that they say that they're going to change reforms, immigration policies, and it's not going to be racist because they're doing it. Except people can hear what they're saying, and none of it really makes any sense. And what is the overarching sense for me is that Labour are panicking. You know, every single thing they do is formed around what Reform are saying. Every single thing they do is to fight off Reform, and they don't seem to even agree. I mean, Andy Burnham says there's a culture of fear in the Labour Party.
They're petrified, Mike. They're absolutely petrified, and they're panicking because they see Nigel Farage on the march in the polls, opening up about a 10-point lead by some estimates, and they're desperately thrashing around, thinking of any sort of strategies to try and neutralise that. But what they are risking, I think, is really straddling two horses here, because on the one side, they are trying to talk tough on things like illegal migration and legal migration, and saying that you know, they are going to get tough on borders to try and stop the bleeding of Labour voters to Reform. But on the other side, they're trying to stop the bleeding on their leftward flank to people like, you know, the Greens, the Liberal Democrats, your party, Corbyn's rabble and the rest of it, by calling Nigel Farage a massive racist. And so, you know, they're really, really struggling, I think, to come up with a coherent strategy and a coherent narrative for the country. And I'll tell you what's not going to be a coherent narrative is telling people that they've never had it so good and that, you know, the sun is shining, because people can feel it in their own pockets. They can see the boats coming over. They can see migrant hotels opening up every single day. And that is where I think that Labour really need to get a grip with it at the moment. Seize the narrative, know what you want to do, and until they do that, unless they do that, and there's lots of conversations going on at this conference about what Labour really are as a party at the moment, and Andy Burnham is helping them to try and do that. then they're really going to struggle to actually close that gulf in the polls.
Exactly right. Jack, good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Jack Elson there, Sun political editor up there with the Labour Party cabinet in Liverpool. It's funny, it's a bit like sort of dealing with people who can't quite put long trousers on. They can't talk to me directly. They have to talk to me through Jack Elson, the editor, political editor of The Sun. I wonder why. What are they frightened of exactly? What are they frightened of? 56,320 people have come here since Keir Starmer was elected Prime Minister. That's in one simple year and a bit. Since the beginning of January, 33,078 have arrived, and some of them by the grip of more than 1,000 a day. On Saturday, 125 came on one super dinghy, which is the way it's going to look for the rest of the year, probably. I wouldn't be surprised if we reach 45,000 or possibly more by the end of the year. Add to perfect English, perfect criminal record, how about they have to arrive in dry trousers? Says one suggestion here. This is it. They can't stop the migrants coming. There's no point in telling us what they're going to do with them when they get here. First, you've got to stop them coming. It's as simple as that. Coming up next, we're going to talk to Lord Glassman, Maurice Glassman, of course. He's a Labour peer. He's up there at Labour Party conference. He's written a piece in The Sun today in which he says Labour is sinking, but Captain Keir can still right the ship. I don't know about that. We'll find out why he thinks that. Coming next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 8:40. I'm Mike Graham. This from Keith in Lincolnshire. Mike, love the show. Starmer, being a lawyer, should know how to conduct his finances legally regarding his donkey field. Hee-haw, hee-haw, hee-haw to know better. And Deborah in North Yorkshire says, Mike, jobs for the youth? Well, the military is severely depleted, so why not employ them there? And Mark in Chester says, morning, Mike. Starmer, ee-haw, talks like this. The trouble is, right, you can't get away from this story that Keir Starmer made 300,000 quid on a piece of land that he bought for 20,000. He sold it in 2022. He bought it in 1996 when 20,000 was an awful lot of money. And he avoided paying any tax on it because it was in a trust. he says he didn't create the trust, but it's called a implied trust. Everybody who knows anything about these things will tell you that when you do a certain number of actions legally, something else happens, and that's what happened here. So he's being slightly, shall we say, economical with the truth. Let's talk to Maurice Glassman, though, who is, of course, Lord Glassman, Labour Life peer, founder of Blue Labour. He says Labour is sinking in the sun today, but he thinks Captain Keir can fix it. Lord Maurice, very good morning to you.
Good morning to you.
Good to see you. Things are not great, are they? 14 months in. Andy Burnham says there's a culture of fear in the Labour Party. There's no dissent allowed in the parliamentary party. People have the whip removed if they don't agree with the sort of the main view of the cabinet. And there's all sorts of people, more than 50% of the party, who think Keir Starmer shouldn't be leading it anymore.
Yeah, I mean, the situation is, it's been a very difficult year. The issue, Mike, is how they understand the world. I'm here at conference and I'm astonished. I mean, I was at the Trump inauguration, you know, and the world's really, he was talking about tariffs, he was talking about building the army. It's a completely different era we're in, and I think that's much more the issue, and I don't see that any of the other candidates have understood this new era. If anything, they want to go back to the comfort zone. So, you know, this is politics in real time, and you've got a Prime Minister who really wasn't expecting the world to be like this, trying to adjust. I've got some sympathy for him.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're a very generous man to have sympathy for him, but you know, he's not in a business of sympathy really, because he's in the business of running the country, and unfortunately, almost every policy that they've introduced, certainly financially speaking, hasn't worked, and so far their immigration policy doesn't appear to be working, and as they go to change it, many people in the party don't like the direction of travel.
That's what I'm saying. So I'm just saying to your listeners that I've got a huge amount of respect for Shabana Mahmood. She's a very decent person, she's a patriotic person. She wants to get a grip on the boats and she wants to get a grip on the border. I'm completely with that. Now, I don't see from Andy Burnham that he wants to do that, so I'm not interested in the internal challenge. This Prime Minister has got to understand reality and move into position. You know, I don't know how old you are, but do you remember Thatcher?
I do.
Yeah, would you remember when she was elected in '79, her first 18 months were terrible. The wet, confusion, then we got the Big Bang, then we got the Sailor Council Houses, then we got the Falklands. No one remembers her as lacking direction, but if you'd have tuned in sort of late 1980, you'd have said she's a goner, she's got to go, every policy has failed. So, you know, I'm in favour of really building up the armed forces, putting the Royal Navy in the Channel, stopping the boats, getting out of the European Court of Human Rights, nationalising water, nationalising steel, nationalising the railway, and, you know, actually get some industrial strategy going through our partnership with Ukraine. So there's an agenda taking shape, but, you know, sometimes it just doesn't happen immediately.
Yeah, but it hasn't been really working in any way, shape or form towards anything, it seems to me. I think that's what people worry about, and at the moment it looks rather like they're sort of flailing around a bit.
Yeah, that's where I disagree. So Shabana Mahmood is very straightforward. John Healey at Defence is actually doing very well, and we've actually got an industrial strategy on the back of defence spending through the partnership with Ukraine. So you're saying nothing's working. I'm saying there's signs of things moving into position. So it's a matter of nuance.
Well, you can say there are signs, but the trouble is people, generally speaking, have lost confidence in Keir Starmer. And you talk about Margaret Thatcher, but when Margaret Thatcher inherited the economy, it was in a much worse place than the economy was when it was inherited by Keir Starmer. And then Rachel Reeves deliberately kiboshed it by putting in some things, and you'll know, if you want to talk about industrialisation, you'll know that industry is at an all-time low at the moment, not least because recruitment is down, nobody's offering anybody a job because they can't afford the national insurance contributions.
Yeah, I get it. But this is, I think, the conversation we're having is about this. Is that you think that's Keir Starmer's fault? I'm saying we haven't had an industrial strategy since 1964. The world has changed. Things are on the move. That's what I'm saying. You're saying like this is all his fault. I'm saying we've had a long-term problem in the economy. The Conservatives couldn't sort it out because all we did was go for the money. We just went for finance in the city. We closed down our industry and put all our investment into China. Now China's I mean, we have been wrong for 50 years, Mike. This is not just waking up this morning and saying, I'll get Andy Burnham in, it's all going to be sorted.
Yeah, no, I get that, and I'm not any great defender of the Conservative Party and what they did, and neither am I that much.
I mean,
of a
they're
defender.
dead. This is what I'm saying to my party, Mike, is if you don't get straight with working class people, industrial policy, stop the boats, and do all that, then we'll go the same way as the Conservatives.
Well, it's already looking like that, isn't it? I mean, you've already got half of the people...
It's looking like that.
Half the people who voted Labour in July last year aren't going to vote for them this year. I mean, that's a pretty appalling state of affairs, and that is Keir Starmer's fault because he's the Prime Minister.
Yeah, I get it completely, but he is trying to adjust at least to the new realities and find his way. Put it this way, do you see anybody else in Labour who could challenge?
No, none. Not at all. I think we should have a general election. I think we should have a general election and let the people decide.
Look, we're not a country like France or Switzerland that has these. We had an election last year, Mike.
Yeah, I know. And look what happened.
In July. Now we have 5-year terms. Yeah, but that was what the people wanted. It was a huge election.
No. Well, some of the people wanted.
Our system is you've got to give them... No, but it was a very significant win. What are you saying?
Well, it was a very small win with a very small number of people. Are you saying it
wasn't?
He had fewer votes than Jeremy Corbyn got in 2017.
You see, there is a God, you know.
Good.
So,
listen.
You see, that's the way it works.
Well,
so what I'm saying is, give it a go. What I say to people is, OK, don't close your heart, don't spit on your grandparents' grave, have a look at what's going on, and let's see where we are next year.
Yeah, well, I can tell you where we'll be next year. You'll be agreeing with me and saying let's have a general election. But we'll talk about it again. Maurice, good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Lord Glassman there talking about how he wants to see renewal. He didn't actually say the word renewal. That's Keir Starmer's word. He's got a lot more faith in him than I have, that's for sure. Let's get a voice note from James.
Morning, Mike. It's James from Blackburn. I'm just watching James Murray. What a drip that man is. So we're having a welfare scheme, a youth welfare scheme. And if they've not been in work for 18 months, we'll give them a guaranteed job. Where? What? Who's paying for it? Like, what job? How's that going to keep them in work? You're just going to put them in a job that they're probably going to hate, and then they just won't turn up for that job. Are they allowed to be fired? They just talk bloody rubbish all the time. I've had a rest from watching any of this for the last week or so because it's too stressful. And then, as you can tell, bloody stressed again now. Jesus Christ.
James, listen, I'm sorry, mate. Just listen to a couple of donkey noises. You'll be all right. That'll calm you down. It's a bit like, you know how they have goat yoga? Maybe you could have donkey yoga. What do you reckon? Yeah. We'll come back with more of that. Let's do now, though, 90 minutes in 90 seconds with The Sun.
90 minutes in 90 seconds from The Sun.
Time to say hello to Martin Lipton, Chief Sports Reporter at The Sun. Rolling Shane is the back page headline. It's all about the Ryder Cup. What an incredible weekend. Some highs, some lows, some really terrible things happened. But the Europeans retained the Ryder Cup after an incredible final day. Martin, very good morning to you.
Yeah, sorry about the dog in the background. I've locked him out the front room.
He's very welcome.
To be fair, it was a great opportunity really for England or Europe rather to turn a mountain into a molehill and then back into a mountain, which is what they did yesterday. I mean, they'd won it to all intents and purposes by Saturday evening, right, and they looked to have lost it by 9 o'clock last night. It was far more nervy than it should have been. But in the end, Shane Lowry's putt guarantees the half. Tyrrell Putton gets the win, and then Robbie McIntyre gets the icing on the cake with the final point, 15-13. Only the fifth time Europe have won in Europe, won in the USA, and a really successful weekend and a great triumph for Luke Donald. But my word, they made hard work of it.
They did make hard work of it, and there were some things that happened. I know different people have different views on this, but there were some things that happened. Quite frankly, if my father had still been alive watching that, who was a golfer all his life, he played off 3 at one point, had a brother who's professional, came from Scotland, played the game all his life, he would have been pretty appalled at the way some of those people behaved.
It was beyond boorish, wasn't it? It was disgraceful, yeah. Let's be honest. And the American PGA and the Ryder Cup organisers in the States really have got to take responsibility for it. When one of the PA announcer is using 4-letter abusive words to Rory McIlroy before he even gets to the tee, something is seriously awry with the way they're doing it. We knew it was going to be raucous in Bethpage. It's New York. Let's say New Yorkers are blunt at best.
Yeah.
But this was beyond the pale, utterly unacceptable.
Yeah.
Something has to be done, and the trouble is, it won't. They've got to deal with it. No, they don't. That's not what it's about. It's supposed to be a game of honour and integrity and decency, and far too many of those qualities were absent.
And that's what I think makes. People might call me old-fashioned and a bit of an old sort of, busybody, but it seems to me that golf is one of those sports that, at the very least, should be able to retain some of that honour and tradition. I mean, I'm all for a little bit of rivalry and a bit of joking around, and as Rory McIlroy said, when in between shots, say what you like. I wouldn't even go that far, because some of the insults were awful, and somebody threw a drink at his wife. I mean, it's ridiculous.
There were loads of insults about Rory and his wife, others as well. It was unacceptable. I mean, how anyone can think that that's decent behaviour? More importantly, how anyone can afford to drink at $16 a pint, I don't know, but they certainly put a few down them for behaving like that. I'm really, really disappointed by that. But in the end, it all gets forgotten to a degree by the Europeans because they won. But even in that match yesterday, there was an incident with Rory where you could see he was demanding some supporters, call them that, punters, were thrown out because of the getting on the tee.
I know, absolutely shocking. But a brilliant win, as you say, even though it was hard work and they made heavy going of it. Martin, great to see you. Thank you very much. You've got to run. Martin Limpson there, Chief Sports Reporter at The Sun on a great Ryder Cup victory. Shane Lowry all over the papers, jumping around. Front page of The Times, front page of The Telegraph as well. And The Sun, of course, all over Ryder Glory. Just coming up, we're going to speak to the Taxpayers Alliance.
90 minutes in 90 seconds. From The Sun.
We've got a regional county FA, not a national FA, coming out with this document. I look at some of these words and I think, someone needs to get a life. I then, on the other side, think, well, are they actually creating a duty of care as a county FA and bouncing the ball over the tennis court to make certain that they don't get charged with any problems in the future? I think we're creating a world of fear here.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. Coming up very nearly into the last hour of the show, 9 o'clock coming looming very large. Starmer loves using the X Factor contestant trick of coming out with a weepy backstory in order to garner votes. It will be brought down by his shady tax affairs akin to Al Capone, though people quite like Capone, says Mark in Salisbury. I'm not sure about that. Let's talk to Elliot Keck, though, head of campaigns at Taxpayers Alliance. Yesterday, it was revealed over the weekend that Jaguar Land Rover have been rescued with a £1.5 billion loan guarantee by the government, which of course means that it's your money they're basically guaranteeing Land Rover with. Their suppliers have been rescued as well. Let's find out what it all means. Elliot, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike.
Jaguar Land Rover, it seems to me, are no longer, despite what Rachel Reeves says, a great British company. Yes, they are a British marque, but they're owned by an Indian company. Why are we giving them a load of taxpayers' money?
I think it's a very good question, and I think one of the reasons is, bluntly, Jaguar Land Rover is one of the Prime Minister's favourite companies. He gave a major speech in April. It's one that he feels politically attached to, and I think it will be pretty insulting to the countless numbers of family farms, family businesses, pubs, hospitality sector who Starmer and Reeves have so ruthlessly gone after, that he's finally found a company he's willing to help.
Well, that's the trouble, isn't it? Because, one, they've kiboshed their own sort of business by coming up with that ludicrous rebrand earlier in the year, where they lost the whole right to even be called, a forward-thinking company. They did that ludicrous advert where even Elon Musk says, "Excuse me, are you still selling cars?"
Yeah.
And they pretty much wiped off most of their sales. Then they had the tariff problem, which is still in existence. Then they had the hacking problem. They seem to have been on a sort of course of self-destruction for about the last 12 months.
Yeah, absolutely. And yet, because of their connections, because of their brand, and because the Prime Minister bluntly quite likes them, they're able to get significant help in the form of this underwritten £1.5 billion loan. And if you're, a local pub that's really struggling with the increase in national insurance, increase in the minimum wage, the upcoming employment rights bill, and all the regulations that the government keeps on piling onto you, you're going to look at this and feel like this is a bit of a smack in the face, because the government's not helping you out. They're not giving you a loan. You're just going to end up having to shut your doors as a result of their policies.
Exactly. And I mean, rescuing companies never ends well for governments, does it? I mean, there's been so many times it's happened and the money never gets repaid.
Yeah, that's right. We've seen this time and time again. So all eyes are going to be on what happens to this loan. As I said, it's underwritten, so it's not directly given by the government. Basically, the government has said that if the loan isn't paid back, they will pick up the tab. So all eyes are now going to be on whether this loan is paid back over the next 3 years. And if it isn't, then I'm afraid Starmer and Reeves are going to have to offer up the public some humble pie.
Yeah, well, I'll give you 3 guesses as to whether or not it gets repaid, and all of them have got the same answer. It won't be. Elliot, good to see you. Sorry, we're going to cut you short. We've got hardly any time this morning. It's been really busy. Elliot Keck, head of campaigns at Taxpayers Alliance. I mean, we shouldn't be underwriting commercial deals with companies who have sold their own selves down the river, for heaven's sake. First cousin marriages. What a great way to keep the family wealth in families and avoid tax. Love watching Plank of the Week and Morning Glory. Yeah, thank you very much indeed. We've got one more hour of the show to go. It's coming up to 9 o'clock. News is next. Jack Elson, political editor at The Sun, live from Liverpool conference up there with Labour, coming next. It didn't really matter. And so what he can say, though, is he didn't put it into a trust, even though all of the things that he did would suggest that actually it is in a trust until he sells it in 2022. Let's have a look at what he had to say yesterday to Laura Kunsberg on the BBC.
I was a lawyer, I had quite a lot of money, I bought a field for £20,000 at the back of their house, and I said, here's your field, it's yours for as long as you may live, you can put your donkeys in it. I didn't create a trust, I simply bought a field and I said to Mum and Dad, this is for you.
Okay.
It was, and also, by the way, Laura, it was £20,000. We're not looking at a vast estate with great tax.
It's a lot of money to many people, and it's sold it many years later for more than
a lot of money, but
£200,000.
the idea of setting up some complicated trust for a £20,000 agricultural field, which then housed 4 donkeys for all the time my mum and dad. It was my mum. She was able. They had a little outhouse at the edge of the field, and she was able, in the end, to see the donkeys. And my dad built a little sort of porchway so he could wheel the wheelchair out so she could touch the donkeys. That's what it was for, and I gave it to them. I had enough money at the time because I was a lawyer. It was a gift to my mum and dad.
And that's now on the record. You did not put it in trust, and that's not been on the record before, and that is now on the record.
That's the face he's got when he's asked that question, because he's just realised, oh, crikey, I've just said I didn't put it in a trust. But, of course, what people say to me is it's an implied trust. The people who know about these things say that what happens when you do what he did is that it's not a gift. He didn't gift it to his parents at all. He loaned it to his parents, and that way he kept ownership of it, which meant that he wouldn't have to pay inheritance tax on it, which is a perfectly legal thing to do, but it's just a bit of a hypocritical thing to do when you spend your life telling people not to avoid paying tax. He then made £300,000 on it when he sold it in 2022. It's not clear whether he paid any capital gains tax on that. It's not clear whether he paid any tax on it at all. And so there are many questions. And let's start with Jack Elson, political editor at The Sun. Jack, very good morning to you once again. Good to see you. Thanks for talking to James Murray for us. I know it couldn't be easy talking to those guys, because they come out with stuff as if you're not going to challenge them. And I thought you challenged him very well. But what we didn't get a chance to ask him about was Keir Starmer and the donkeys. We've been talking about that all morning because, you know, everyone that I know who's in the financial business says that what he did effectively was create a trust. Now, it's an implied trust which can be created when you do a specific thing. So when he said to Laura Kunsberg, I didn't create a trust, technically speaking, he could be correct. But actually, that doesn't mean there was not a trust created.
Yeah, you're totally right, and this whole affair does seem a bit murky. We had obviously the original allegations published in the Sunday Times over the weekend, and they were trying to get answers out of number 10 Downing Street for days before they printed that story, and answers were not forthcoming. And then Keir Starmer yesterday, in his interview with Laura Kunsberg, revealed that actually it wasn't in a trust. So why were Downing Street being so guarded in that beforehand, unless there was something which was more to the story? And I think that it's probably incumbent now on Keir Starmer, on his advisors, to put all the facts into the public domain so that people can judge for themselves. It's probably the last thing that Keir Starmer wants to be talking about. Maybe Andy Burnham's probably the last thing. Second to last thing he wants to be talking about at this party conference. But once again, rather than talking about any sense of policy and direction which the Labour government wants to go in, instead we're talking about the financial affairs of one of its main players, in this case the main player, the Prime Minister.
Exactly right. And again, it leads to these questions which, as you say, the Sunday Times have been asking him for weeks and weeks and weeks and getting absolutely nowhere, just getting stonewalled. And then suddenly, as you see his reaction to when she says to him, well, now you've put that on the record, he doesn't look comfortable with that, does he?
He didn't look comfortable in that entire interview. I was watching it yesterday and thought he looked so unsure of himself and unsteady and nervous. And Keir Starmer, I think, will be the first to admit he's probably not the best orator and interview performer of his generation. But he has got better, since that sort of wobbly jelly which he was back in the opposition days. But he has got better. But yesterday, I thought he really did seem really not sure-footed at all, and that question really seemed to knock him. You do wonder whether everything, when it comes to his response to the donkey trust, the attacks on Nigel Farage as a racist, he didn't really intend to say them. He just sort of came out and said them in the moment because he was so unsure. Yeah, I understand that actually he didn't go into the interview meaning to say that Nigel Farage's policies was a racist, and it was just an off-the-cuff remark in response to Laura Kuenssberg. That's what I've been told. And, because with something as strong as that, you would think that you might plan it with your advisors and, think that actually that's what you're going to be doing. But I don't know, he just seemed so unsure yesterday of what he was saying, and so nervous. So, who knows what he really meant to say?
Yeah. Is there a sense that the wheels have come off a little bit, the Downing Street machine? Because Morgan McSweeney's still under a lot of pressure. Still the stories are continuing to be run about this situation with the Electoral Commission and the £740,000 donation, and even more donations that have come through Labour Together over the course of the weekend that have been discovered. I mean, it looks like there's quite a lot of money coming through Labour Together, which is looking more and more like a sort of bit of a shadow government, right? But presumably Morgan McSweeney is very distracted by all of that, so perhaps his hand is not as closely on the control of Starmer and the ministers as it used to be.
Well, we do know there are constant questions about the staff in Downing Street, and over the past few months, some of Keir Starmer's key advisors have left their posts. We had Steph Driver, the Director of Communications, very able person who was very good friends with the Prime Minister personally, who he trusted her a lot. She's out the door. Paul Ovenden obviously had to resign in the wake of that WhatsApp, also the email scandal with Diana, but he was incredibly close to Keir Starmer and really important in trying to drag Labour to blunt the reform threat to the right and not just give in to sort of the progressive wets in the party who would drive Labour off a cliff electorally. And so he doesn't have many friends really left behind him in the black door of Downing Street. Morgan McSweeney is one of them. He's been with him for years now. He is essentially the embodiment of what anything which can be described as Starmerism is in terms of trying to make the party electoral. But there are people now questioning, actually, is he the emperor with no clothes? And he's often portrayed as this election mastermind, whereas I think most people would say that anyone would beat the Tories at the last election. And now we come into government and actually the policy cupboard's pretty bare. The direction is very wishy-washy. And as you did say, there is a sense that the wheels are starting to come off. And so, whether Morgan McSweeney can now get a firm hand on the tiller and try and right this ship and point it in the direction of electoral success, that's the question that remains to be seen. I don't think the answer is calling your biggest rival's flagship policy racist. No. I don't think the country reacts well to that. I don't think reform voters will suddenly go, oh, actually, maybe now I'm voting for a racist party and therefore I'm going to come back to Labour. I don't think that's going to happen.
Well, exactly. I mean, The Sun, I think, sums it up well this morning on pages 4 and 5 with that great headline about pages 8 and 9, racist jibe Keir Lamity. It's a new one on me. I quite like it, though. We're going to steal it and use it as a banner here at Talk, because Keir Lamity is exactly what this Prime Minister's career has turned into. He's being assailed from all sides. All of his friends have kind of deserted him. He's got cabinet ministers fighting each other. None of them can seemingly extrapolate exactly what their policies are about. As I said earlier on today, we've got Andy Burnham saying it's a climate of fear in the party. You've got Steve Reid, the Housing Secretary, unable to mention how many houses have been built. Rachel Reeves speaking this morning, unable to say how much this youth jobs guarantee is likely to cost the government. You've got all sorts of complications over immigration with Shabana Mahmood, and meanwhile the numbers keep going up. 125 people on one super dinghy coming in on Saturday.
And this is it, and I think, let's take, for example, the last one, illegal migration. Shabana Mahmood is being billed as the Terminator, a no-nonsense, tough-talking Home Secretary, and she is tough-talking. And to be fair, her previous history of stuff has been, fairly tough and radical, whether it's castrating paedophiles and the like. Obviously, she did a good job, I think, of reinventing herself after letting out thousands of prisoners early. But she is sort of seen as a bit of a hard person in the cabinet. But talk is very cheap. And now the public want answers. And it's all very well putting out punchy statements saying that people shouldn't suddenly they're a modern slave, and if you don't contribute, you're going to come back, and members won't always like what I do because I'm going to be political. But now, I think after a year into this Labour government, which is people are going to want answers. They're going to want to see asylum hotels closed down. They're going to want to see ludicrous perks for migrants, such as taxis and freebies, put to a stop. They're going to want to see the boats come to an end. And so unless they actually put their money where their mouth is and have actions that deliver on the words that they say, we're going to be back here next year and it's going to be even worse. And that is if Keir Starmer is in the top job, because there are constant questions about whether he can survive as leader of the Labour Party. Now, I think he probably will be in that position, but, you know, it's gone pretty badly downhill in a very, very short space of time. So it's anyone's guess where we'll be in 12 months' time.
Yeah, exactly right. And what's your sense of the atmosphere there? Because obviously they're keen to put out, you know, we are all united, you know, we want to fight reform. They don't seem to be talking much about the Conservatives these days. It's all about reform. How are the people that you're talking to reacting to Keir Starmer?
Well, it's interesting because you have, I think, one of two things. You have a lot of people that say it is clearly not going very well for Keir Starmer at the moment, and his position is under threat. Now, that threat mainly at the moment is coming in the form of Andy Burnham, who's made no bones about the fact that he wants to succeed Keir Starmer for the top job. Obviously, all sorts of caveats within that. Can he get a seat? Can he get a winnable seat that Reform won't win? And then will he even win a leadership election? But I do think that the fact that Andy Burnham has come out so blatantly and so brazenly in trying to jockey for the top job and undermine the Prime Minister at Labour conference, where it's a make or break conference for the Prime Minister, has had a sort of rally round the flag effect in the Prime Minister, where lots of the Labour Guard are closing ranks around Keir Starmer because they see him as very vulnerable. And so, yes, you get a lot of questions about Keir Starmer's leadership, but you also get a lot of expletive-laden phrases in the direction of Andy Burnham, because people think that is just a bit beyond the pale. And when someone is so vulnerable and wounded, it's not actually that good to go and slow down.
No, quite. And as if they don't need any more problems, front page of the Telegraph this morning, GPs threatening to strike if the NHS makes it too easy for patients to get an appointment. I mean, this is just what Wes Streeting doesn't need. You know, he hasn't really dealt with the junior doctors yet. They're still coming up for another strike. The nurses might be going out on strike soon. Wes Streeting said he won't stand for progress being held back. But basically, the British Medical Association is saying, if you make it too easy for people to come and see us, we're going to go on strike. It's unbelievable.
It was absolutely unbelievable. I heard the PMA chief talking about this on a different radio, where she was saying exactly that. They want people to book via an app, and they want doctors to write that app because at the moment they're too swamped with services, and they'll go on strike if they don't get their way. So actually, what we're having is that they in the name of patient. How is going on strike in the name of patient safety? It's not. And I think that this government is finding themselves having hit the Tories pretty hard in opposition, saying it's very easy to solve these strikes. All you do is get around the table, bish bash, job done.
Yeah.
Having given them that massive pay rise last year, they're now finding that all the unions coming out of the woodwork thinking, we know that Labour will cave to our demands at some point, and therefore we're going to come back for more. Now, I think Wes Streeting, to be fair to him, has palmed off any attempts at more pay rises for the BMA junior doctors in his negotiations, but you know, they're going to make that easier and easier to happen at some point. So, you know, while they say they don't want any strikes, the government, they're passing this employment rights legislation, which makes it much, much easier to strike. It's a huge shock to the unions. It's going to mean that the threshold with ballots when it comes to striking is essentially negated. At the moment, you need a 50% threshold to get past, and also you can strike for much longer. They're extending the mandate for unions to strike from 6 months to 12 months, and so you know I think at the moment they're going to find they're going to have more waves of strikes coming down the track.
Yeah, absolutely shocking stuff. Jack, good to see you. Thanks very much indeed. Jack Elson reporting in to us from Liverpool, political editor at The Sun, up there at Labour Party conference. Absolutely extraordinary stuff. Tony in Norfolk says, Mike, here's one for you. How about Kianokio, with donkey ears and an incredibly long nose? I like the sound of that. Morning, Mike, says John in Blackpool. Starmer's donkeys. Even his animals take people for a ride. Well, exactly right. You know, he bought a field for 20,000, sold it for 320,000. I mean, that's some pretty good business. If only he could run the country like that, we'd all be a lot better off. But talking to Blackpool, story in the paper today, in the Mail, special investigation by Paul Brackey, an incredible story. This is about a hospital in Blackpool. It's called the Blackpool Victoria Hospital. It's been embroiled in multiple scandals in recent times, and inside the pages of a respected local paper, some of the stuff that's been going on in this place you would not believe. This is, of course, the much-valued NHS. It says here, a rapist consultant, nurses who drug patients for an easy life, a young man found dead in a toilet, and an elderly stroke victim sexually assaulted on the ward. After 6 staff are jailed in 2 years, why this hospital is truly the hospital that shames Britain. Well, it's worse than that. It's a hospital from hell, basically. It's hard to imagine. how many bad things can happen in one place. Lancashire police are investigating. They still haven't concluded their criminal inquiry. They're still trying to find out why the place seems to be run as if it's some kind of lawless enterprise. But it's an NHS hospital, supposedly. One of the flagship health trusts. It's called Blackpool Teaching Hospitals, NHS. Incredible. Anyway, I wouldn't go there if I were you. It sounds like an absolutely horrendous place. What is the development potential of this field? A few houses on there would be a nice little earner, wouldn't it, says Wendy in Dover. That's true. And then this from Mark, who says, in Nottingham, Starmer says we're a tolerant country. Britain is a tolerant country, but enough is enough. Lately, many Brits feel as though we are simply being taken for a long ride, and we're being replaced. It doesn't even look like Britain anymore, sadly, he says. Mark, thanks very much indeed. And Paul from Manchester says, that land that Starmer sold for his 4 donkeys, why didn't he build houses on it to house migrants? Well, maybe he did. I mean, you don't make £300,000 on a 20,000 investment for not doing something quite extraordinary. I don't know what he did, but I fear that there's probably a lot more to come out about this story. It's 19 minutes past 9. Let's get a voice note from Sue.
Morning, Mike. Sue from Farnham here. Our supermarket, local supermarket, which is a well-known one, it is not taking on any more employees. If someone leaves, they are not replacing them. Why is that? Oh, it's something to do with the national insurance. That is what she has done. She is destroying every damn thing that has to do with money. Stop giving our money away and we'll be fine.
That's a very good point, Sue. Thank you very much indeed. 20 minutes past 9. Coming up, we're going to talk about Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese. He met with the King at Balmoral and he had some very interesting things to say about Nigel Farage. We'll tell you what coming up next.
Well, the Prime Minister wasn't saying, and nor would I, that people who are thinking of voting for Reform UK are racist. I do not think they are. Reform UK's leadership have been proposing some policies which look pretty racist to me, but they've also proposed privatising the health service, so you have to pay to see your GP. I suspect a lot of people thinking of voting Reform wouldn't agree with that. We also had Farage in the United States, in Congress, pleading with the United States to put sanctions on British workers to get rid of their jobs.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 24 minutes past 9. I can't believe we've only got about half an hour to go. First day, Monday, and heaven's sake, 29th of September. It's all kicking off up in Liverpool. Keir Starmer's put his first lie of the day out. He says, I will not allow wasted talent to become Britain's story. My Labour government will give young people the opportunity to earn or learn. Yeah, this is this idea that they're supposedly going to give new jobs and free jobs to everyone aged between 18 and 21. They're calling it the Youth Guarantee. But, of course, it's not a guarantee. Let's have a look at what Rachel Reeves is saying this morning. She won't come on this show, but here she is talking to Good Morning Britain.
Sorry, I just want to translate this. You will not increase VAT in the budget.
The manifesto that we stood on made those commitments around the VAT, income tax and national insurance, and we did that for a good reason.
Sorry, Chancellor, with respect, I don't understand why it's such a hard question to simply answer yes or no to. Nobody's asking you for the reason why you put it in the manifesto. Yes. You put it in a manifesto because you wanted to win an election.
No, the problem is, Susanna, is that as soon as you answer one question, you'll move on to the next one. We made a manifesto commitment about those 3 specific taxes, and that manifesto commitment stands.
They keep saying the same thing, that manifesto commitment stands. When she was asked about how much money is it going to cost for this youth guarantee, she couldn't say. When the housing minister or the housing secretary, Steve Reed, is asked how many houses have been built, he can't answer the question. When Keir Starmer gets asked, you know, whether or not they're going to put more money towards housing and building 12 new towns, he doesn't know when it's going to happen. You know, there's a pattern emerging here. Sophie Olsworth's here with us. Sophie, very good morning to you. News Corps Australia's Europe correspondent, of course. You were up at Blackpool yesterday for day 1 of the conference. It's all over the place, isn't it?
Yes, I was at Liverpool yesterday, Mike, day 1 of the conference, and it's not probably going as well as they want, no. I would argue. They've obviously had a lot of distractions here. They've got the Andy Burnham issue. There were, interestingly, when I arrived, lots of protests as well around the conference, and they're getting all those headlines that they didn't want, and I don't think it helped when Sir Keir Starmer made those remarks about Nigel Farage and his racist policy, because that just set the news agenda for the day.
It did, because he's now having to spend time answering questions about it. All of his fellow ministers are being asked about it. You know, do you think Nigel Farage is a racist? You know, it's obviously a stupid thing to say. We're also now being told that he wasn't planning to say it. That, you know, he had his fixed, you know, answers ready, and then he was kind of pushed on it, and he came out with it, because you can't differentiate between so-called racist policy and racists. I mean, if you're accusing somebody of having racist policy, then by association you're accusing the party of being racist and the leader of the party of being racist, aren't you?
Well, it's very offensive, obviously, to be calling someone racist. It's not something you do lightly. Right. And he's tarnishing a lot of Britons, including Reform supporters, if he's going to tar them with that label. I think that's a very silly thing to do. And now it seems like he said this sort of in the heat of the moment, and now he's having to backtrack from it or try and explain himself. What a mess, Mike.
I know, totally. He's also handed another prize to Nigel Farage, who's just come out and said this morning in the papers, well, you know, this is an insult to all the decent, hard-working people of Britain who just want immigration under control, which it currently isn't. And so, you know, these are people who he thinks are going to come back and vote Labour. They're not going to.
Well, that's true, Mike. And also, if I was in his media advising circle, I'd be pretty annoyed with the Prime Minister. It seems like he just goes a bit rogue, and then they'll be there trying to be in damage control now to work out how to get through this. And can he stop talking about Nigel Farage?
I know.
He just keeps rabbiting on about him. Stop it. You're just giving him more and more oxygen. He's not helping himself. I find that incredible how much he talks about Nigel Farage.
Well, I'm sure Nigel Farage is quite happy about it because it just boosts his numbers every single time. Another guy who doesn't want to talk about Nigel Farage was the Australian Prime Minister. He was here, of course, the end of last week for this progressives get-together where, you know, Emmanuel Macron and Albanese and all these characters all sat around congratulating themselves for being so brilliant and so kind of, you know, centre ground and, you know, moral and all right and everything was great. But Albanese didn't want to be asked questions. You were asking him questions about Nigel Farage. What did he say?
Correct. So he was here last week, Mike. The Australian Prime Minister was in the UK for the last 3 days. Now, we asked him specifically, I asked him, have you ever met Nigel Farage?
Yeah.
He was pretty snappy. He said no. And the Australian media pack kept pushing him.
Right.
Will you meet him? Are you interested in meeting him? Given he's on track to be Britain's next Prime Minister.
Yeah.
He's got no interest. He said he doesn't like divisive politics. He was quite scathing of reform. And this is, again, very, very silly, because if the polls are correct, the next Prime Minister of this country could well be Nigel Farage. He should be getting to know Nigel Farage too, because he's about to meet with Donald Trump next month. And as we know, Nigel Farage gets on incredibly well with Donald Trump. So I think it's quite a silly move for him to be, again, criticising him.
But it also shows you what the kind of quality and calibre of these politicians is. You know, these politicians who come from what they like to think of as the centre-left, it's probably quite a lot further over than that, where they don't respect the actual electorate. You know, Nigel Farage is already, forget about what the polls are saying, he's already had a massive win in the local elections in May. You know, he's already done what nobody thought he could do, which is to get 5 MPs into Parliament. You know, the idea that they don't like you because they don't like your politics, even though you've been elected by a vast majority of people in your constituency, I think it's pretty arrogant, to be honest.
Well, Mike, he did say his defence to this was that he had met with Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch while he was here, so he was meeting with the opposition, but as I said, he doesn't want to meet with Nigel Farage. Now, shouldn't he be thinking that he should at least meet Nigel Farage, given the impact he's having here and given that Britain and Australia are extremely close allies?
You would think. He also got drawn on the royal situation. You were up in Balmoral because he went up to see the King. But he's a guy who's formerly kind of talked about republicanism in Australia, isn't he?
Absolutely. He's a Republican really at heart, but we had a referendum a couple of years ago to introduce a voice to Parliament, and that got thumped and failed. And so he's a bit gun-shy in terms of having another referendum during his term. Now, we asked him, he's here meeting King Charles. He met him. He flew up to Balmoral on the weekend to meet with the King. He had a pretty good meeting, he said, with the King. But he said that originally he said there will be no referendum in his term. He's got a couple more years in his current term. But then the media pushed him further. Will there be a referendum for Australia to move to a republic while he is Prime Minister? And he said no.
Yeah. So that's a new development for him, isn't it?
That is. So while he's Prime Minister, he has said there will be no referendum in Australia to move to a monarchy, to move to a republic. Now, Mike, there was a poll last year, just after the King and Queen came to Australia in October, asking Australians, should we remain a monarchy? And it found 57% said yes. Now, there's many, many polls that have been done over this over the years, and everyone pretty much comes out, we want to stay as a monarchy. We don't want to move to a republic.
Is it one of these things as well that's been driven a little bit by some in the media who think that, you know, that's what they'd like to see, so they're just going to keep asking?
Well, we do have a largely left-leaning media in Australia who are pro-republic, so of course they would love to become a republic. The Aussies don't want it. They love the royal family, they like it the way it is, and the question is, if we did become a republic, how would it work? And no one has an answer to that.
That's the big problem, isn't it? That's what they say here as well, was that there was a time when people were talking about that, and you'd end up with President Tony Blair, which nobody wants. I mean, it's bad enough with him running the country as it is from behind the scenes. But anyway, good to see you. Sophie Ellsworth, News Corp Australia's Europe correspondent. Lots more to come, including more royal news as well. Michael Cole joins us, a royal commentator and writer. Front page of The Sun today have got Wills and Kate, the Prince and Princess of Wales, with a new house and a new no-go area around it, which I think is fair enough. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 9:35. I'm Mike Graham with you for another just under half an hour's time. 10 o'clock, Julie Hartley-Brewer here, of course. Here's one from Richard. He says, Mike, I just got my doctor's appointment. Absolutely brilliant service. I'm on the Costa del Sol. It's in Spain. Yeah, absolutely. The Spanish app works a lot better than the English one. Tony from Sussex says, well, I'm in the car park at Heathrow in my black cab together with the many hundreds of other drivers waiting to be sent down to a terminal. Well, all I can hear is your voice coming from most of the cabs. You're getting very rightly popular, Mike. Keep up the great job. Well, listen, you know me. I've got a great respect for the black cab drivers of this city. I was in one this morning, funnily enough, and absolutely fantastic people. They do a brilliant job against incredible odds, dealing with Sadiq Khan every bleeding day. Mike, fantastic show. One of your very creative followers must be able to do a thing linking Starmer to Shrek and the talking donkey. Have a great day, says Brian in Sheffield. Yeah, you'd like to think somebody could come up with that. I think we're not going to let this donkey thing go because it's too good for Keir Starmer to talk about how he bought a field to put some donkeys in so that his parents could look at them for the purposes of making them feel better about themselves. You know, nobody wants to see elderly parents, but look at all the people who've got elderly parents who are in wheelchairs, who can't do anything, who can't get out, who haven't got a spare 20,000 quid knocking around to buy a field, which you later sell for 300,000 and don't pay any inheritance tax on, or it would appear capital gains tax, for as far as we know. I think this story is going to unravel before our very eyes. But let's take a little detour before we do anything else, because at 9:37 in the morning, the front page of the Sun, get off one's land is the words. Park closed off as Wills moves in. We've got a new house being put together for William and Kate, Prince and Princess of Wales, and they're going to protect it with a huge no-go area, banning locals from any land around the home. I think that's fair enough. I mean, he's going to be the heir to the throne now. He's going to be the next king. CCTV cameras, massive fencing, landscaping as well, keeping trespassers away from the 8-bed Forest Lodge in Windsor Green Park. Some dog walkers are moaning, saying the Home Office closing a car park is a kick in the teeth. Well, I'm sure they can find somewhere else to walk the dogs, no? Michael Cole's here. Michael, very good morning to you.
Good morning to you, Mike, and good morning to all the black cab drivers and everyone else as well. I mean, you've summed that story up extraordinarily well, because security is the bane of our lives, isn't it? I mean, it's the thing that hobbles and harasses us all at all times. But it's necessary with so many people out there who are of ill will. One has to think of the family first of all, the Prince and Princess of Wales and their 3 young children, and they're moving from Adelaide Cottage, which is hard by Windsor Castle, to another part of the royal estate at Windsor, in Windsor Great Park, Forest Lodge, 8 bedrooms, a much more grander affair, said by them to be their forever home. And what has happened is that an area, and it is a vast area, 150 acres, has been hived off, so to speak, with a new security fence around it, CCTV cameras being put in. And the local people are understanding that security is needed, but they're very disappointed and very upset because people who were living within half a mile of the Forest Lodge were able to pay £110 a year to get a key to the gate to use the area to walk their dogs or to exercise and to enjoy a little bit of the countryside in the Windsor area. So disappointing for them. There's understanding on the part of the public, but at the same time a feeling of frustration that they cannot no longer use the area that they've used for so many, many years.
Sure. But I mean, you know, it's a big area, isn't it, Windsor Great Park? I mean, there's lots of other places you can go. And I mean, normally speaking, I would be sticking up for the people here. But as I say, I think overarching security purposes, I think over kind of, you know, trump that, to be fair, because you have to protect them. It's as simple as that. You know, there are too many nutters around these days that you don't want anybody getting too close because it has happened in the past, hasn't it?
Yeah, there's more out than in, I'm afraid, and this constant security concern is always there. It is the house itself, Royal Lodge, quite a grand affair, quite large, imposing, part of the Windsor estate, it has been designated as a royal residence, and that's why it's changed. The people who lived there before didn't need special protection, and the arrangements which had worked so well for so long has gone on, and this has been imposed. A great shame in a way, because it does restrict people's lives, but they have understood it. And, you know, the British people are always long-suffering and understanding towards these considerations. Nobody wants anything bad to happen.
No, exactly right. And, of course, not a million miles away, also on the Windsor estate, is our very good friend, Prince Andrew, and the former Mrs. Prince Andrew, the Duchess of York. They're being told, we don't want you at Christmas, thanks very much indeed, which is not surprising after the publicity for the last couple of years from them.
Yeah, Mike, of course, Christmas, the season of goodwill, when families love to come together and demonstrate their love for each other, or not, except in this case, the king has let it be known that he doesn't want to see his younger brother and his ex-wife at Sandringham House for the traditional Christmas. Obviously, he doesn't want those photographs film of them going to the St Mary Magdalene Church on at Christmas time, and then a group photograph of all the royal family. They didn't go, the Yorks didn't go last year because he was involved with a Chinese spy called Yang Tengbo, I think that was what his name was. There we see on a very happy day, a wedding I covered, 1986. They were married 10 years. They've been divorced for twice as long as that. That was 1986. And of course, it was a great wedding. They didn't need any encouragement to be kissed. At that time, they were only too eager to do it. And there's the firstborn child, I think, with them there, Beatrice. They were happy days. Unfortunately, it all went wrong, spectacularly wrong. You've chronicled it over the years. Last year, when they couldn't go, they stayed together at the Royal Lodge, as the previous king, George VI, always insisted it be called, with the definite article, the Royal Lodge. And that's probably where they'll be. Without their daughters, as it so happens, they won't be there. Of course, for many, many years, the Duchess went to Sandringham, but not to Sandringham House. The Duke of Edinburgh wouldn't allow her in any room where
she
he
used
was
to stay down the road, didn't she?
She stayed down the road at Wood Farm, which, of course, later the Duke of Edinburgh used quite a lot. She stayed down the road. In 2023, the Duchess Sarah was permitted back into Sandringham House. There was a reconciliation of sorts. But, of course, it's got worse and worse. And the recent dreadful emails to the convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein put the cap on it, and I think the king is showing his frustration at it all. You know, he's banished. He can banish them, sort of nice medieval ring to it, hasn't it? Banishment from Christmas, but of course he's still his brother, and he can't change that. It's a problem that won't go away.
And he won't be able to get him out of the lodge, I'm told, because some people think, you know, they shouldn't really be occupying that now, and particularly given what's happened in the last sort of year or so. But it's going to be difficult to get him out, isn't it?
Absolutely, because he's got a very long lease, 75 years, I believe, and he's spent a lot of money, or some money anyway, at least.
Well, he might be able to make use of Angela Rayner's new, you know, tenant-friendly policies that the Labour government are putting through. He might be able to, you know, get himself a rent reduction if he tries hard enough.
It's always a possibility, isn't it? I mean, in a way, I always thought that the Royal Lodge, a glorious white wedding cake of a mansion rising above the trees in Windsor Great Park, would have been ideal for the Prince and Princess of Wales. Maybe that would have been the preferred route to go. They wouldn't have had to have gone to Forest Lodges, which is going to be their permanent residence now when they're actually in the south. They still have their house and Mahal up at Sandringham, and I imagine that they will be at Sandringham for Christmas as well. Quite a big event, always has been.
Yeah.
There we see them in earlier days with the Princess Royal and her husband there too. All very, very sad, but there's no way back for the Yorks now.
No.
It's hard to see what future they have, apart from in their own company and on the golf course.
Yeah.
Because,
well, they might have to pull it. I mean, he's got plenty of money, I suppose, so I don't suppose there's going to be too much of a problem for them there. But it is sort of bad news all round, really. But
yeah, well, that photograph's there. That's closeness to Epstein.
Yeah.
And of course, that was after, of course, he'd come out of prison for being convicted as a paedophile. Michael, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Michael Cole, our royal commentator and writer. Extraordinary, isn't it? What is going on inside the royal family? Morning, Mike, says Carl from up north. Is it me? But Labour keep going on about their manifesto and it stands. So why have you not done anything in it? Then done the opposite in the past 12 months. Well, this is obviously some new sort of gobbledygook that they've come up with to say that the manifesto stands, which basically means that for the moment we will be continuing to sort of honour the policy that we put into our manifesto, but that might not be for the rest of time. Dave in Kidderminster spotted this. He said, did I hear Rachel Reeves say the clip you played? I'm not answering the question, as you will only move on to another one. If she did this, it explains all politicians. Well, that's exactly what she said. And she basically gave away the reason why politicians don't answer questions. They filibuster, for want of a better word, which means they talk and they talk and they talk and they talk, and they hope that by the time your time has run out with them, that they won't have actually had to tell you anything at all. Russell in Derbyshire says, morning, Mike. Surely the real question surrounding Starmer's field is around £20,000 pasture land suddenly becoming worth £300,000. How close to Keir selling it was planning permission granted, as that's the only reason for such an increase? Well, it's a very good question. I'm not going to leave this one alone because I smell a rat amongst all these donkeys. 4 donkeys in a field. I mean, it sounds like the start of a limerick, doesn't it? 4 donkeys in a field for £20,000, right? Keir Starmer says his dad then built some kind of outhouse for which we don't know whether he had planning permission. The acres of the field are apparently 7. A 7-acre field. That's a lot of room for 4 donkeys, right? Are you really seriously going to tell me that Keir Starmer didn't buy a field thinking that it might accrue in value and then deliberately did not give it as a gift to his parents because he knew that that would then make them possibly too wealthy in their own estate that might make him suffer and have to pay inheritance tax? Are you seriously going to tell me you didn't think about that as a lawyer? Are you seriously going to tell me he's never heard of an implied trust? Because that's what my expert friends tell me it basically is, so that whether he started a trust or not, it became a trust as a result of his behaviour in setting it up. And that's the key question for me. And if it turns out that he's been economical with the truth, then I'm afraid that is very, very serious indeed, because he ends up making a £300,000 profit. And it's not clear whether he paid any tax on that at all. And that includes capital gains tax, which surely can't be right. Dave in Reading says, I've just been trying to pin the lie on the donkey, but I've run out of space. Very good. Coming up, we'll play some more of your voice notes, we'll take some more of your calls, and of course, we'll bring you all the latest from Liverpool, where Labour Party conference is going about as well as can be expected. Hee-haw!
Hello, Jezza.
You all right?
I'm good.
Yeah,
what are you
did you
doing?
drink?
I've had my drink.
Well, I've been running around.
I'm ready now.
I'm sure you are.
Should
right.
we start the show?
No, we can't. Saturday the 15th of November, here's a promise. You will not have seen anything like it. You will get honesty, you will get authenticity, and if we get our way, you might even get a cram in at the top. 3-tier, World of Common Sense with Mike Graham.
And Jeremy Kyle.
In that order.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 9:51 here with you just for about another 8 minutes or so. Julie Hartley-Brewer coming along with her show from 10 until 1, of course, followed up by Ian Collins. And then it's Jeremy Kyle with Drives, Kevin O'Sullivan with the political asylum. It's all kicking off today because Labour government are in conference mode and they are in Liverpool. Today what you're going to see is Rachel Reeves laying out what she's going to tell you she's going to do with the economy, except she won't answer any specific questions because then you'll only ask her another one. She doesn't like that. And of course we'll see old Shabana Mahmood, the incredibly talented Home Secretary, or so we keep being told, very strong woman, who's going to clamp down hard on illegal migrants. She's going to say that if you don't have decent English, if you haven't got a spotless criminal record, and if you don't wish to contribute to our society in some way, shape or form, you will never be allowed to stay here. Sounds like a bit of a racist policy, the sort of thing Reform would suggest. I spoke to Zia Youssef earlier today, and he agreed there wasn't much difference between the two. But of course, the reason why Labour is copying Reform is they're hoping to stave off a massive, massive defeat at the next election. Jackie says this: if this donkey field was a gift, was it declared as it cost more than £3,000, the limit for gifts? This odious communist government must go. Keep us sane. Well, of course, he said it was a gift when he spoke to Laura Kuenssberg yesterday. It turns out it wasn't a gift because he didn't gift it to his parents. He kept control of it and he loaned it to them, which is what means that you create an implied trust, and that's why he's in trouble, because he claimed that it was a gift and it wasn't. We don't want the Prime Minister out, says Simon. Let's make him make more mess. It's so bad now anyway. Anything he does largely pushes people to vote Reform. He's helpful where he is in number 10, helping Reform. And this from Debbie in Red Hill. I don't think it matters what Keir Starmer says. We are now not bothering to listen. He's a goner. Well, I'll tell you what, let's have him explain exactly why he bought a field to put donkeys in.
I was a lawyer, I had quite a lot of money. I bought a field for £20,000 at the back of their house, and I said, here's your field, it's yours for as long as you may live, you can put your donkeys in it.
That's because that's been
I didn't create the trust, I simply bought a field, and I said to Mum and Dad, this is for you.
Okay.
It was, and also, by the way, Laura, it was £20,000. We're not looking at a vast estate with great tax.
It's a lot of money to many people, and it's sold it many years later
It is a lot of money, but the idea of setting up some complicated trust for a £20,000 agricultural field, which then housed 4 donkeys for all the time my mum and dad. It was my mum. She was able. They had a little outhouse at the edge of the field, and she was able, in the end, to see the donkeys. And my dad built a little sort of porchway so he could wheel the wheelchair out so she could touch the donkeys. That's what it was for, and I gave it to them. I had enough money at the time because I was a lawyer. It was a gift to my mum and dad.
And that's now on the record. You did not put it in trust, and that's not been on the record before, and that is now on the record.
Look at his face when he says that. And she goes, that's on the record now. And he kind of goes, yeah, I guess I did say that, didn't I? But then he can't get out of it. He also said he gifted it to them, which he didn't do. He said it was a present to them. It wasn't. He kept it. It was a loan. He did that deliberately. Are you seriously telling me that a high-powered lawyer who's got enough spare money knocking around, and it's as much as anybody makes in an entire year in 1996, that he didn't know what he was doing? Are you really telling me that? Are you? Let's get a voice note from Joanne.
Morning, Mike. Joanne from Norfolk. So on the donkey land issue thing, so my thoughts, so if he gave it as a gift, then as a gift, it belongs to his parents. So therefore, when they died, that would then become part of their estate in terms of inheritance tax. But if it's a trust and it reverted back to him, so it wasn't really a gift, then surely it should have come under CGT, capital gains tax, in terms of tax. But any way you look at it, it looks like there should have been some form of tax potentially on it, or it should have been accounted in some form of calculation in terms of the inheritance tax side of things. But yet again, it sounds like this is another Angela Rayner moment, and they're just trying to avoid what everybody else has to pay. Oh, great show. Thanks, Mike.
Joanne, you're absolutely spot on. It's true, because he didn't. Even though he said to Laura Kuenssberg, see, for a lawyer, he's very loose with his description of things, and he's very, shall we say, inaccurate about what he's actually saying. Some might call it lying. He basically said it was a gift to his parents. It was not a gift to his parents, because if you give a gift, as Joanne quite rightly says, it becomes theirs. They then own it. And if they had owned it, his father's estate, which ended up being about 339,000, would have doubled to over 600,000, right? So in the end, they would have ended up paying more inheritance tax on that if it came back to Keir Starmer. However, since he kept hold of it and he didn't give it to them, it meant that he didn't have to pay inheritance tax. But you're quite right about the capital gains. I don't know what the situation is with that. But it certainly is a right old drama, isn't it? Imagine donkeys bringing down Sir Keir Starmer. Eh? Let's get a word with Nick, who's in London. Hi, Nick.
Oh, hello, Mike. Morning.
Morning. What can I do for you, sir?
Your last caller, your voice note,
yeah,
got it spot on.
Yes.
He sacked Rayner for doing exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
You know, smelly financial affairs,
I mean,
which whilst not actually illegal, stinks.
Yes. It's amazing how many of these socialists have got trust, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and they are a contempt of saying it's only 20,000.
Oh yeah, just 20.
I mean, you know, for heaven's sake, that's at the current days.
Well, back in '96, that was more than the average wage.
Yeah, I know. It's just so contemptuous towards people. It's only £20,000. I mean, when can we? How can we get rid of this charlatan of a government? Charlatans of government.
Yes. Charlatan's a good word. Well, I think they're going to find a way. I think they're desperately trying to find a way to get rid of him. He's trying to find a way to get rid of himself. Nick, thank you very much indeed. Julia Hartley-Brewer's here. Very good morning.
Very good morning. I mean, sorry, doesn't everyone have a donkey field?
I
just thought that was just everything. I thought that was just a thing you all had.
Donkeys, yeah. Yeah, 7 acres as well.
There's nothing illegal.
No.
No, I mean, it's not the biggest story of the day, but at the end of the day, it's that hypocrisy. It's one rule for you, one rule for me,
right.
and, you know.
And also, it's the way that he reacts when he's asked a question.
Yeah, but also, the Sunday Times has been asking questions, and as they were pointing out, we have been asking these questions, and he's refused to answer them for weeks on end. Yes. And then, now Laura Kuenssberg's asking him questions. God, I love the people yesterday saying how great he was at that.
Did you see that Paul Mason?
Yes,
I saw your reaction.
Hilarious. It was he's so bad.
He is.
But also, by the way, Reform's policy on migrants is racist and immoral.
Right.
Now, Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, while I'm on it, is going to be like announcing a policy which is, well, it's not exactly the same because it's not backdated. And he's going, these people who are already here, they're part of our fabric of our society. No, that's literally the point.
Right.
They're not. That's what we're saying. Is if they're not here earning and contributing, then they're not part of our society.
Exactly right. And there's
thanks for coming.
There's plenty of people who have come here from other countries who have got indefinite leave to remain. Who are white, I'm sorry.
Oh, isn't it interesting, the racist thing? Yeah, I'm thinking, who mentioned colour?
Who said anything about race? It's nothing to do with race. It's to do with status.
I don't want white Europeans here. Who, I mean, it's again, they're upset. It's because they're obsessed with race.
Yeah.
The only racists in the room, them.
Them.